Haunted woods.
I work in the leasing office at a property in Texas. I also live on site. We have about 400 apartments and take up 2 sides of a street. I live across the street in the very back and try to keep to myself. I do not like for residents to know that I live there. About 2 months in, a woman and her grown sons lease an apartment with us. The sons are twins. One is special
Should be
needs.
920.
The other is, well, different. He has a very active imagination and is very focused on sex.
Ew.
Almost immediately after they moved in, things started getting weird. One day, I was crossing the street after work to go home.
Did he just watch
As soon
you?
as I reached the other sidewalk, I hear a voice call out, "Hey, Raquel." I turned towards the voice, which I realized was coming from the bus stop at the end of the street.
Creepy.
I didn't recognize who it was until I got a little closer.
Oh, like, oh, it's
We
you.
meet face
The
to
weird
face,
sexual.
and then I realized who it was
kid.
from when he moved in. I knew he was a little weird, so I was trying to keep my distance while still being polite.
Nope.
He's easy to piss off, and I don't know what he's capable of. But I don't want to make him think that there's anything behind the polite hello. He
Besides,
starts telling me that
being
I
polite.
look just like his baby mama, who lives in North Texas. Then
Baby
jumps to
mama?
a different subject about how he had just ran all the way from downtown to here. And
okay.
decides to tell me his entire family history, naming all of his
Okay.
cousins and homeboys.
Okay, that's
Rambling
weird.
on about essentially nothing.
What's a baby
I
mama?
haven't said anything other than oh,
Besides your
uh-huh,
mother.
and okay at this point. I keep taking steps backwards to indicate that I'm trying to leave,
No.
but he keeps talking and moving closer to me.
No?
As I'm trying to leave, I notice that he has a huge boner.
Oh,
He
okay.
was wearing
No, thank
basketball
you.
shorts, as always.
No, thank you.
It was pretty difficult to hide. This really creeps me out, and somehow I managed to get away from him. He sat at the bus stop staring at me as I walked away, and I didn't want him to know that I lived there, so I just kept walking down the street to make it look like I lived elsewhere. Every now and then, I would see him around the property, or he would come to the office and talk to me, and it was really uncomfortable. The leasing office had a hallway leading to the manager's office, the copier, and the package room. There was a door on it too, which came in handy quite a bit. His visits got to the point
was
where
lucky.
every time I saw him walking up to the office, I would run and hide in the back and let the other staff deal with him.
Nope.
He wasn't creepy towards them, and they knew the situation, so it was cool.
Great. That's
Cut
good.
to December though. Our office was being remodeled, so we were using our business center as a temporary workspace. It is only one room, and there's only one way in or out, and no place to hide. I was alone in the office one day, and who should come walking in but my worst nightmare?
What's his name?
I
Forgot.
needed to borrow a copy of his mail key because he misplaced his or didn't have one, whatever.
Something or other.
We have to take an ID in order to release the keys, and he didn't have his. So we had to go to his apartment, get the ID, and come back. We have to take an ID in order to release the keys, and he didn't have his.
Oh,
so
did
he had to go to his apartment, get the
Yeah.
ID, and come back. In the time that he was gone, I set up my phone on my co-worker's desk and started recording video in case anything went down, just so that I would have evidence in case. He noticed the tattoo on my shoulder and commented on it,
Did he
asking,
say how sexy it is?
"Hey, is that your name? Or why in the hell would I have my own name tattooed on myself?"
Yeah, good question.
I tell him that it's my
Some people are
grandmother's
weird,
name,
dude.
which sends him into this whole spiel about how he has his grandmother's name tattooed on him.
Okay.
And he is an artist and he draws people's faces and such.
Okay.
He leaves to go check his mail, and returns a few minutes later.
Trying so hard to
However,
impress you? Is that what
when
it is?
he returns, he has added something to his ensemble. He now has a pencil behind his ear. I suppose it
Okay.
was there to make him look more like an artist.
Oh, he is
He
trying
said
to.
that he was
look
going
like
to
you.
draw my face, but I have to send him a picture so that he can look at the image of me. He said that he would draw me and bring the picture to the office later that week.
Creepy
Which,
still.
by the way, I never sent him that pic. Months go by, and no picture. I was walking through the pool to go walk an apartment, and he catches me in the pool area. Crap, no escape.
Oh no, he's here.
He presents me with, well, I don't really know what to call it. It's me, or I guess how he sees me at least. picture
Is
was
it creepy?
drawn on lined notebook paper in pen. It looked like he threw it together in 3 minutes. He drew me black. I'm white, wearing a short, tight dress.
Okay.
Not something I would wear, ever. Legs 2 different sizes, carrying a purse with Texas on it. That's not an item I own. It was really creepy. Upon closer inspection of said drawing, I noticed that
Thank
the
you.
nipples under the
Brains.
dress. At first I wondered if he'd originally drawn me naked.
Ew.
The next day, I talked to the maintenance man about it.
Is it really
He says that he
form-fitting?
did
The
originally
dress?
draw it naked, but decided to put clothes on it because giving it to me would look too forward. Another day, I was walking out of one of the pool gates and he was walking in through another. I saw him out of my peripherals, but didn't acknowledge him because, well, you get it. He says to me, "Hey, Raquel,"
Yes?
twice.
Raquel?
A very low voice.
Hey, Raquel,
I'm
try to be
hard of
sexy.
hearing, so I can get away with pretending that I didn't hear someone.
Nice.
But apparently, this made him angry. The reason I know all this is because he talks to one of our maintenance staff about me regularly.
Okay.
That person relays the weird, creepy, delusional crap that he says about me. According to him, I was really rude, and he don't play that.
You don't
were
play
his
that?
words.
Alright.
The next few times I saw him, he had this deranged look on his eyes, like he was disgusted by me.
Oh,
And
okay.
it also kind of looked like he wanted to hurt me. Well, a few weeks go by, and he apparently gets over being mad at me, and resumes being the creepiest man alive.
Alrighty then.
The maintenance man tells me that he claimed to have met my boyfriend, and that he's a cool dude, so he's gonna back off.
Okay.
I asked my boyfriend if he had ever met him, and he says no. The maintenance man tells me that he claims to have met my parents when they stopped in for a visit.
Okay, now he's
They
getting
were really
delusional.
nice too, cool people. I also asked my parents if they had spoken to
Have
him,
you seen
saw
this
him.
guy?
but they also said no. I don't know when or how he could have met them or even saw them.
I don't think he did.
I never saw him around when
He's
they were here.
delusional.
And I have confirmed from multiple different people that were there that he was nowhere around. Was he hiding in the bushes? Recently,
Might be
I
crazy.
decided to use our fitness center late at night. The fitness center has these big windows that overlook the second pool on my side of the property. While I'm on the treadmill, which is in front of one of these windows, he appears. And
He appears
he's
like a
just
demon from hell.
staring at me through the glass, waving at me, watching me.
Aye.
I pretend that there is a glare on the window. I didn't see him.
Ignore!
And he
Desperately
disappears
ignore.
into the dark shadows in the pool area. I continue my workout. The next day, the maintenance man tells me that he talked to our friend. He could not stop talking about how he saw me in the fitness center. He went
Okay.
into detail about what I was wearing, how form-fitting it was, how sweaty I was, everything. Just overall, really creepy stuff that gave me the chills.
Were you wearing that?
So, I avoid the
Guess so.
fitness center and use my real gym to avoid seeing him again. A few days go by, and my informant, the maintenance man, tells me that my stalker was wondering why I stopped going to the gym. Apparently, ever since that night, he had been returning to the pool around the same time to wait for me, so that he could watch me work out again. What the heck?
I
He
mean,
starts to show up at the office more frequently,
Creepy.
and I have to avoid him. On Friday, he is sitting in the pool area by the office, directly behind where my desk is. There's a huge window behind me, so
Yeah.
you can tell. I turn to get something out of my cabinet and catch him staring at me.
ooh, hello.
He waved, and I flash a nervous peace sign and proceed with my business.
Yeah,
And
they're the same
he's
way.
not in swimwear, but fully dressed. He has his notebook with him.
Okay,
He's
he's gonna draw
frantically
you.
drawing something.
Drawing you.
I think to myself, great, here comes another picture of me, but this time in workout clothes. My co-worker went to pull up the golf cart and close the cabana. She has to go through the pool area to do this, so she got a glimpse of what he was drawing. It was a cross with my
Okay.
name going down the middle of it. According to him,
Creepy.
I asked him to draw a tattoo for me. And so, that's what he was doing. Drawing
Okay.
a tattoo, for me, that has my own name on it.
That's creepy.
It was bad enough that it was a cross, but with my name? Well, apparently, he
Religious.
said he was going to give
Or
it to me
crazy.
the next day.
It's upside down. No.
Next day,
It's a plus sign.
he didn't show up. 2 weeks pass, and I think that maybe he isn't going to give me the drawing. And enough time had passed at this point that I thought he had given up, and that I could use the fitness center again. My friend and I go in around 8 PM, and we didn't see any signs of him, so we go ahead with our workout. I was flipping over to do leg raises on my right side, which causes me to face the door, and chills engulf my entire existence, and my heart...
Your entire existence?
He is standing directly across the street, on the phone, staring at me through the door.
Oh,
I start to panic and find a place to hide from view. Peeking around the corner, I see him turn and walk through the outside hallway behind the leasing office. Hoping that he wouldn't come back for a while, we continue our workout. I keep glancing out of the windows every few seconds to make sure he isn't there. And he reappears, still talking on the phone, but this time he starts pacing around the fitness center very slowly, looking through the windows with this creepy side glance. Like I wouldn't be able to see him creeping. I keep trying to hide from view, and I'm waiting for an opportunity to get the hell out of there. I'm hiding in a corner, and he walks up to the locked door and knocks on it. He continues to knock for a solid 3 minutes, and then finally leaves. He walks down the street a little way, and I take that chance to run back to my apartment as fast as I can.
Is he truly gone?
Today, my informant tells me that Stalker said that I wouldn't let him into the fitness center for a drink of water. Apparently he said that he had been on a run and just wanted some water, but I wouldn't let him in. Then he switched up his story and said that he was just trying to give me the drawing of the tattoo that I had asked him for. Well, I know for a fact that he didn't run from anywhere. He was wearing flip-flops.
And he wasn't sweaty, right?
Secondly, he had been standing still for a good 30 minutes before coming to the fitness center, and he had gone back to his apartment where there is water. So why the hell would he go all the way to the fitness center for water? And 3, he didn't have the drawing
The thirst
with him.
is real.
From what I could tell, he didn't have any pockets on what he was wearing, and it wasn't in his hands. He also claims to have talked to my neighbor that lives across from me, and said that I'm a weird and crazy girl, and that he should stay away from me. And that shook me to my core, because if that is true, then he knows where I live.
Well, he's just saying that. He doesn't even know your parents. Because he claims to have met them, right? You never described them, though. Or your boyfriend.
This happened a few years back in a mountain suburb of Vancouver, Canada. This really happened, although I wish it didn't. My aunt had just purchased a beautiful old home in this neighborhood, but being a business executive, she often traveled around Canada for work purposes. Her 2 children were at her dad's home for an extended period, and their live-in nanny went back to her home abroad for a much-deserved break. And so, my aunt asked if I could house sit, as the large home would be unoccupied, and she felt uncomfortable with that. I agreed to this, thinking that it would be a small weekend break where I could lounge around and raid their fridge.
Steal
It
food.
was about 1.5 hours from my place, and I was generally eager about the whole thing. The nanny, who we were all very close to, and who was like a second mother to my younger cousins, warned me before leaving that she thought that the house was haunted.
Oh.
The country where she is
Alright.
from, the Philippines, has strong beliefs about the paranormal and ghosts.
Oh, well then
And
that's the
said
reason
that she
said that.
routinely saw a woman dressed in Victorian clothing by the outdoor pool. She told me to do
Plot
some
twist,
special
it's just a
prayers
person
for
living there.
protection or something. And being a believer in the paranormal, and experiencing a few things myself in unrelated incidences,
Gotta talk
I
about
actually
that.
took her pretty seriously. I was a little bit frightened. But I figured at this point that it was too late to back out now.
Yeah.
So she left and I settled into the home. The first few hours were pretty uneventful. I just watched some TV, browsed the internet and read some of their tabletop magazines.
Hey, Brains.
Eventually,
Bye,
I
Brains.
sort of forgot about what she said about the haunting. I ate dinner, took a brief swim, and and things started to get a bit weird.
Then there was a ghost in the
I
water.
had that familiar feeling of being watched, like most people report when speaking of the paranormal.
Yeah.
I tried my best just to shrug it off, and realised that I had forgotten an extra towel outside on one of the patio chairs back when I was swimming. When I went outdoors, the towel was floating in the middle of the pool.
That's not that
This
weird,
freaked
is it?
me out a bit, but
The wind!
I forced myself to calm down, thinking that maybe the wind blew it or something.
I was gonna say,
watched some
chill
TV,
out, it's just a
hoping
wind,
it would
Jesus.
distract me.
Not everything's a
I was
ghost.
watching reruns of My So-Called Life when the faucet in the kitchen began to pour out water. I went to
leaky
turn it off
faucet.
quickly and noticed that a single plate lay in the center of the floor, face
She's like,
down.
wash your plate.
I put it away and nervously go back to the TV room, but sit in the corner with my back facing the wall because I was growing scared. And I didn't want something to sneak up from behind me like in a horror movie.
Yay.
Where I was sitting, you could see the outdoor pool through a glass wall screen. After about half an hour, I noticed that the water was sort of bubbling.
Oh no.
I went to
It's
the
a
glass
hot
door
tub.
to investigate and saw that it appeared that the water was moving as if someone were doing quick laps back and forth.
Okay, that's creepy.
But there was no audible splash sounds to accompany the movement.
Okay, that's also weird.
I also got an overwhelming sense of dread, and goosebumps formed on my arms.
Probably
on the back
because
of
you're
my
seeing
neck.
the water go on its own.
Well, I turned off the TV, made sure all the doors were locked, and sprinted upstairs to the master bedroom.
Nope.
I curled up under the covers and started reciting the prayers the nanny taught me before she had left. I must have stayed awake for hours, long after the sun had set, trying to will myself to sleep. I had left the lights
That
in
was
the
my
room on because
poor dodging
I was
skills.
just too frightened. As I closed my eyes and tried to calm down, I heard a piercing scream that seemed to come from the outside window. And
Ew.
then the light turned off, leaving me in the darkness.
Well, that's just rude.
At this point, I'm having a heart attack, but I'm too scared to move. And all of a sudden, the locked windows start to flap open and
Huh?
shut forcefully.
Huh?
They were the ones that had panes that opened outwards, if that makes sense.
No, I
Also,
get it.
at the same
I
time,
don't like it.
the thick, heavy wooden doors in the hallway
like seeing
leading
locker
up to the
doors
bedroom
open
began to
at
do
school.
the same, causing loud banging, and I felt as if the whole house was shaking.
Huh?
These doors would not have been moved by a strong gust of wind. They could only be moved by a forceful movement of a hand or something.
Well, at least it's not strong
Also,
enough for you to
the
not
opening
move
and
trees
closing
as
of
well.
the doors and the windows were all synchronized perfectly.
I've seen
After
doors
about 5
open by
minutes,
wind that strong.
everything
It's
just
pretty scary,
stopped.
actually.
And the silence was almost deafening. All I could hear was my stifled but heavy breath. And then I heard a sound that sent shivers down my whole body.
Talking?
The glass screen door on the first floor slid open and then shut. There
Nope.
were slow, methodical steps coming through the TV room
Okay, now someone's just being
and
an
up the
asshole.
stairs. It was as if each step were taken with intention,
She's like,
loud
"I'm
enough
spooky,
to
scary."
only scare me. Then the first door opened in the
Okay, now the
hallway,
ghost is just having a
then
laugh.
the other, and finally, the bedroom door creaked open. I shut my eyes tightly and listened to the footsteps as they approached the side of my bed. I felt as if a pair of eyes were piercing through the covers at me.
Ah, where'd
Then
you
the
come from?
footsteps moved to the foot of my bed. Minutes passed. The presence in the air in the room was so heavy. And strangely, not one sound could be heard from outside. Not even the crickets that often frequented my aunt's backyard could be heard. Then, all of a sudden, all of the covers flew off of me. I heard a loud cackle, like something you would hear out of a cartoon witch.
Okay, that's just me.
Well, I bolted up, packed my stuff, and
Nope.
left the house as quickly as I could,
Howdy.
only stopping to lock the front door as the key slipped over and over in my shaking hands. I was so desperate to get out that I left the screen door unlocked, but figured that no one would get in anyways, as there was a big fence surrounding the backyard. And
Yeah,
frankly,
besides the
in that
ghost.
moment, it wasn't my top priority at all. I checked into the Closet Hotel, too scared to drive home, and spent a sleepless night there, calling my aunt in the morning. She seemed confused when I told her what had happened, as she said that she had never felt any ghostly presence there, but that the nanny had mentioned it a few times before. I guess that she just never really took it too seriously. She lived in the house for a couple of years
Sorry,
after
the
that,
ghost is just having a
and
good
ended up
giggle.
relocating to Shanghai with her children for business purposes. We didn't really speak about it much, but when I told my mother, she said that she had always felt creeped out there.
She's
They
like,
told
welcome
me
to the
that
house.
once, while she was swimming, she felt as if someone tried to push her head underwater. After that
that
day,
ghost just beat me
I
there.
always avoided that house, coming over only when necessary and when others were inside.
Oops. Yay. Darn it, I was gonna release that, damn it. Okay, I cannot rely on them to get it before I... Darn it.
When I was about 17 or so, I moved back home to the beach after staying out in Washington for a bit after earning my GED. Not long after I got back, I made some new friends, with one in particular, Chris. This story isn't about him, but how meeting him was probably the worst thing that could have happened. Now, we used to
It's
hang
not
out all
about
the
him,
time,
but he's the worst thing
smoke
that ever
weed,
happened.
drive around aimlessly, go out to bars, etc. Just your everyday teenager stuff. We were, however, pretty into urban exploration, I guess you could say.
I guess.
We used to go into the woods all the time in random places just to explore. We live in a big city, so there
That's
isn't
more
much
forced
adventure in the
exploration, but
concrete
okay.
jungle. Anyway, one night we were driving along this huge stretch of road one city over. Chris, B, a female friend, and myself. It was probably about 7:30 p.m. in the middle of summer. There are usually street lamps in most parts of the city, but it was pitch black, with thick woods on either side of the street. The sun hadn't set yet, but you couldn't see anything below the tree line. Chris decides to tell us about this path in the woods that connects to neighborhoods he used to use as a kid, and how it's a cool spot to smoke up with rope swings and benches and stuff. So of course, we're like, yeah, let's go. We make our way into the woods down the path we can see, and it's well beaten, a clear sign it's used often. I never worried about weird things happening because, you know, they always happen to someone else. As we got to the bench in the middle of the path, we sat down and rolled up. B was making a spectacle of playing on the rope swing that hung out over a ditch that was about 6 feet or so deep.
Alright, B.
So we finished rolling up and have 2 really nice blunts. Lit up, and we're just sitting there bullshitting,
drugs.
having a good time. And out of nowhere, the air seemed to get really thick. It's hard to explain, but my throat started getting tight.
Ooh,
It was getting
you
harder
get
to breathe. I
spoopy.
started getting lightheaded for seemingly
Scared.
no reason at all.
You got scared.
It
Your
took
throat
me a minute to
scared.
realize what I was feeling. It was dread. Just sheer terror. and
Probably
I don't
because
know
your throat's
why.
tightening too, you know?
Before I could even ask my friends if they felt it, we heard footsteps, and no sooner did we take notice that 3 men were standing
Chris?
within 5 feet of our circle.
Oh god, he's from Chris.
Now it's pitch black. We have no lights, just the cherry of our lit smoke. These men look like nothing
Red.
but shadows in the dark, and we can't see their faces, clothes, or anything.
They're like, where's
It was
the drugs?
extremely unnerving, to say the least. After what felt like forever, one of them spoke to us. "Hey, what are you guys doing out here so late?"
Yeah.
I replied to them, we're just cutting through and stopped to smoke up." "Mind if we join you?"
No. Yes?
No. Obviously, it would have been better to tell these guys to fuck off, but I didn't want to set anyone off, so I told them yes. I don't think things would have gone differently if I had told them no.
Yeah.
But either way, one of them sits next to us on the bench and just starts small-talking, asking things like, "What do you guys do for work? Where are you from?" etc. It wasn't
none of your
polite small
business?
talk. It was like he was trying to keep us distracted, which I didn't seem to notice at the time.
Well, yeah.
He kept talking as he gave one of our blunts to his friend. who I'll remind you hasn't said a word and didn't sit either.
Not suspicious.
The other two just stood next to the bench, looking like they were waiting for something.
A ghost!
I passed the other blunt to our new friend, just hoping that they were trying to get a free smoke out. I couldn't have been more wrong. No sooner than the three men having both of our blunts do they get really stiff, like statuesque, and reach into their pockets.
And pulled a
And
gun.
you guessed it, all three of them were armed. Now I'm standing there thinking that they just wanted our weed and didn't want us to argue about it. Then came the very stereotypical, "Now give me everything you have."
You
As
kidding
guns
me?
were drawn and literally put within an inch of my face, I could almost look straight down the barrel. Damn the darkness, I was so close to it. I just stood there. I didn't move at all. I guess I was kind of in shock, like I really didn't believe what was happening. Then out of nowhere, the man to my left let a round off right next to my ear. Now if you think a gunshot is loud when you hear it on your street, you have no
Ooh, next to your
idea
ear.
how loud it is when it
Ooh.
goes off right next to your head. I jumped about 10 feet and rushed to empty my pockets. I gave them my phone and my wallet without hesitation. My friends followed suit, and I thought that was the end of it.
Oh, now they want your
We
soul.
weren't so lucky. This did nothing but make them even madder. They were pissed that they only got 2 cell phones and maybe $40 from 3 people.
Really?
Since our car was
have
still
2 cell
parked out on
phones,
the
you.
street, they assumed we must have had more valuables inside. One of the men grabbed Chris by the collar of his shirt and told him that he was going to walk them to the car, let them take what they needed. B and I, of course, protested and were met with more guns in our faces. 2 of the men took Chris out to the car while the third looked at us and said, "Now, I'm going to walk halfway up the path and find me a nice bush to lay low. If either of you try to run or do anything smart, I'll be waiting with a bullet." And he walked down the path after Chris and the other men. B and I stood there in the middle of the woods in complete silence for a long time.
Okay, now you can run.
We talked about how good our chances were. If
I'd
we tried
run
to
that
make a
point
run
blank.
for it, and ultimately
Cute.
decided against it. We weren't sure if the guy was bluffing or if he really was waiting in a bush to shoot us. It felt like we were there forever.
I
and
mean-
out of nowhere, 3 more gunshots rung out from the street. B lost it. She started
Now run.
bawling right there in the woods, sobbing at the thought of Chris being murdered. I tried my best to console her and almost strangled her at the same time. When I leaned in to hug her, I could see the light from her phone in her back pocket that she refused to give up. We used it to call 911, but never put the phone to our ear. We just called and put it back in her pocket while talking about the situation. We were scared the guy in the path would see the light if we kept it out too long.
Oh, okay.
We waited there in the woods for an eternity before starting to see flashlights and hearing the barking of dogs.
Dogs?
It was the police.
Police?
I couldn't have been more relieved, and neither could B. She started sobbing all
Oh,
over
Chris.
again, and we
Thought it was
walked out
Chris
of the
was the
woods
one
with
who
the cops.
instigated it.
They took B to the side while they zip-tied me and put me in the back of a police cruiser. I started staring out the window, wondering why and where they took B before I noticed Chris was sitting next to me. I started crying myself,
Chris,
out of
your
relief
fault.
that he was alive and wondering what had happened when they got to the street. He told me they had brought him to the car and had him let them in. He said he let them take whatever they wanted, which still wasn't much in terms of sellability. He said they got pissed and hit him, then shot off a few rounds before running into the woods on the opposite side of the street. I asked him if he told the cops that, and he said they wouldn't listen. And didn't take me long to find out why. They pulled me out of the car after talking to B, and I insisted they remove the zip ties if I wasn't being arrested. Why should I? Apparently, the police thought that B was in danger of us. Granted, I realize now
Police
that they were
really?
only being diligent, but at the time I was not only offended, but pissed off. They thought that Chris and I were back there trying to rape B or something just as heinous.
Oh, really?
It was pretty shocking that they straight up accused us of sexually assaulting her in the woods and refused to listen about the men. That is until B calmed down enough to tell them the same thing we did. Eventually they believed us, but it was too late since it had been almost an hour since the men took off into the woods.
Police.
They told B
Being-
that she could drive her car home,
being
but because
stereotypical.
Chris and I were adults, they wouldn't allow her to give us a ride back. So I asked the cop if he would take us home, and he declined, and not politely either.
Okay, now
It
you're
was
just being an
pretty clear
asshole.
they thought we weren't being 100% truthful about not messing with B in the woods. The cops left us there,
You
standing in the
sexists.
middle of the road in pitch black
Holy
darkness.
shit, these cops
Woods
are
on
actually
either side,
sexists.
After being robbed at gunpoint, and the man probably still close by. I've never been that terrified in my entire
Oh, great.
life.
If we end up dead, it's all
We
your
started
fault,
walking
police.
down the street. I think we must have walked for a good 5 miles, the entire time glancing over our shoulders, scanning the tree line. Every time we heard any
Diligent
sort
and
of
stupid.
noise, we jumped and just stood still. Eventually we came to a main road and
Hey,
could see
B,
a
you
shopping
should
center
walk
not
with
far
them.
off.
Fuck, screw
These
these
were
police.
usually patrolled by security at night, so we thought it was our best bet.
They don't deserve to be
get
chivalrous
to
if
the
they
main
think
stores, a Dollar General, and scanned the lot for any type of security, and there was nothing. Not one car in the entire lot. Now, these were back in the days of
I think they
payphones,
kidnapped
and
B.
luckily there was one right
that.
outside.
Oh my god, these police
I
are
got on my knees
liars.
to scan the underside of a soda machine and found just enough to make one call.
They kidnapped
We
B.
called Chris's brother, and thank God he was awake and agreed to come get us. I don't think I've ever been so relieved to get into a car
Can
in
you
my
report
life.
these police people?
They got us home safely, and all I could think about was that I would be deaf in my left ear forever, while trying to stop shaking. I lost the first cell phone I had ever had, a new wallet, and almost my hearing, but I'm extremely glad I'm
Okay.
still alive,
Still got your hearing, though? That's
despite
good.
everything. I'm a 22-year-old male. At the time this took place, I was
They're
16
not
years
being
old.
diligent. They're being
It was
assholes.
summertime and school was out. I'm an avid pot smoker and have been for as
They
long
just
as
left
I
some
can
kids
remember.
alone in the woods.
It was about 8
with a
p.m.
couple
on a hot summer
crazies.
night. I was
Because
walking
you
to my
think
apartment unit from another
because
unit
they're
in
men
the complex when a
that they
black
raped
Ford
someone.
F-150
You have
pulled up
problems,
next to me,
police.
and I heard a woman say something. I looked, and she was waving over to the truck. As I was walking over, she asked me if I knew where to get some pot.
No.
I hesitantly responded, "Are you a fucking cop?" And then she shows me an open beer in the cup holder of the truck, implying there's no way she can be a cop if she's drinking and driving. So I asked, "What's in it for me?"
Are you actually
She
drinking?
responded, "A bag of weed. Now get in here." Thinking to myself that this can't be a good idea,
Yeah, no kidding.
against my better judgment, I hop in the truck and call up my dealer for some pot. He answers after the first ring. I let him know what's going on. We start heading his way. But before heading his way, she thought it would be a good idea to buy a miner some alcohol and proceeded to make me drink a beer as she drank another one herself.
Oh, she's put poison
On
in
the
it.
way to the
Don't think I
spot
don't
we
know
were
your
meeting
shit.
my dealer, she asked if I could call him and that she could speak to him. I agreed. Somehow they made a deal on where he was going to bring her crack also. That's when I knew I fucked up.
Oh, shit.
We get to the spot. My dealer hops in the back seat of the truck. They exchange drugs and money. Apparently my dealer and the crackhead made a deal as to where he was going to have a hit of the crack too. But as soon as the crackhead hit the crack pipe, she turned into a different person.
I knew it.
She reminded me of someone who was possessed. She told my dealer, "There's no way you're hitting this unless you eat my pussy." She then whipped her leg over the middle of the seat and put her leg up on my lap with her vagina fully visible.
No thanks.
She was wearing a skirt. He declined and he proceeded to fight and argue over the crack pipe. I jumped out of the truck out of fear.
He doesn't want your
I ran
vagina,
across
girl.
the street to a gas station. Instead of calling for my mom for help, I ran back to the crackhead's alleged truck and asked her to drop me back off at home. I would have walked home, but it was getting late and I was quite the distance from home.
Alright.
I'm not sure where my drug dealer and her left off because by the time I got back into the truck, he was gone and she was completely out of it. This is where shit really got scary.
And then she pulled out a knife.
I lived on a main street back then, and we had only driven 5 to 10 miles down that street to pick up the drugs and pot.
Right.
When she started driving, she went to the opposite direction of my apartment.
Oh,
She
will
wasn't
rape
taking
you.
my directions
Goddamn.
very lightly. She screamed at me, saying she knew where she was going. I didn't know what to do. I thought about jumping out of the truck while she was driving. She didn't stop at stop signs or red lights.
Oh,
I'm
shit.
surprised she didn't get pulled over.
Cops!
She then
Where
starts
the hell are you?
freaking out about the fact that I'm 16
You're supposed to help
and I
me.
had gotten her drugs. She told me to call my mother because she wanted to bitch her out for not knowing where I was or what I was doing.
Okay, she cray.
I was so confused and scared. I told her that my mom would beat her ass if she knew that this was going on, so I called my brother. As soon as he answers the phone, she starts screaming into the phone. He almost couldn't understand what she was saying.
What the? Who the hell's this?
Eventually she took me home, but forced me to smoke a blunt with her.
Okay, you're crazy.
As if I hadn't already went through enough shit that night.
I have to
I
smoke
rolled a
more
blunt
drugs.
and we smoked it while walking around my apartment complex.
But that's our kink.
While smoking, she saw two young men and chased after them.
Oh shit!
I
Run!
took that chance to run
She
home
gonna rape you!
and never look back.
Or make you take her drugs!
When I was a freshman in high school, I befriended a weird kid in my gym class, George, who ended up becoming friends with my entire group. But soon he became fixated on me and would follow me around campus. Then he started following me home.
Oh
I tried
no!
to distance myself, but I would have to stay away from my friends as well, and 14-year-old me didn't realize that was the smart thing to do.
Distance yourself from
Eventually
your friends,
stopped
from your
being weird
friends.
for a few months just to gain my trust back.
Okay.
But once he did, George started being creepy again and told me that he could make a tea that would make me tell all my secrets and
Alright.
give it to me without me knowing.
Okay.
I went to the principal and the admins to talk to them about it,
Gonna
and they
give
say
me
I
drugs.
couldn't get a restraining order and because 1, we were in the same class, and 2, we would have to be within
that's a
the
good point.
restraining order zoning limits because we were in the same school, and 3,
Right.
they wouldn't let me switch schools or force him to switch schools. They ended up pulling him out of class and talking to him about it.
Okay.
George came up to me and basically told me to watch my back. I slept with a knife
Alright, you're
under my
rapist.
pillow for the rest of the year and carried a knife on me at school. I'd rather have been suspended for carrying a knife than murdered by my now stalker. He still followed me home every
Thanks,
day, but he
school
stopped
calling
being creepy after freshman year, and we never spoke again.
Good.
I moved 40 minutes
Look at
away
me,
with my
goddamn
fiancé
putrid.
and roommates and have blocked him on social media and cut off that circle of friends
Oops.
altogether.
Ah, well. You're friends with the crazy, though. That's what they were. Friends with the crazy
My
one.
family, me, Mum, Dad, and brother, and I were in a capital city that we did not live in for a theater performance. Keep in mind, this city is 8.5 hours driving from where we live. Also keep in mind that we flew home on a plane, a 3-hour fly.
Right.
We were walking along the foreshore a few hours from the show to get a drink at a well-known bar. It was about 5 p.m. and still completely light. The walkway was quite busy and everyone was moving. As we walked, I saw a man sitting on a park bench to my right about 30 meters in front of us.
Darn it.
He was staring at me. I've seen some weird people, but this man was noticeably scary. He
Yeah.
had very red eyes, like he was high or whatever, and
Oh,
black
no.
hair gelled back. He was Sri Lankan, I'm pretty sure. Not relevant, but gives us a better
Not
idea
relevant,
of his
yeah.
appearance, and was wearing a dark green and black striped t-shirt. He had a scuffy black beard and his whole body was very still. About 25, maybe 6 foot tall. I remember all this
Actually, I
because
think
he
it's
was
just gonna
fucking
be-
scary and staring directly at me. We held eye contact for a short while
110.
and I got cold chills throughout my entire body. I told my mom this man was staring at me and she grabbed my hand
No, actually,
and told me
yeah.
to keep
It's at
walking and
9:20.
not to look. We walked past him and I was relieved but still on edge. I didn't look back. About 200 meters along the walkway I saw him again, sitting in another park bench, exactly the same position
He's a
and
ghost.
expression. He was
He's a
staring at me.
ghost.
He'd fucking passed us and sat down again to watch me. It was some glitch in the Matrix shit, but
Yeah.
I was absolutely terrified and stared directly back at him.
That's still creepy, though.
I whispered to my mom that he was back, and she saw him too.
He
but we walked
witchcraft.
away into the bar. After the drink, we walked across
He's
the
a
bridge to the
preacher
show, and I looked
transporting.
fervently for him, but he was gone. Next day, we get on our plane back to our city, 3-hour trip. On a plane, I still remember him and looked for him that morning as we went to the taxi,
Did you see him?
but he was nowhere, thank God.
Good.
We get home, unpack, and go to the beach that evening for a swim.
Oh no, he's
We
gonna
were
be
5
there.
minutes from it. And of fucking course, this absolute fucking creep is sitting on the fucking concrete, staring directly
Exact
at me.
same way.
Same shirt, same red-ass eyes, same expression, but a little more of a smile.
Oh,
I
okay,
started
now he's
tearing
smiling.
up.
That's creepy.
I was literally shaken to my core. He was in my city, not far from my fucking house. Fuck that. I told my parents, and we left. They were serious as shit about it and watched all the cars behind us on the way home. It's been a few months, and I haven't seen him, but our bikes were stolen from inside our house the other day.
Okay, now he's stealing your
Inside
shit.
our house. We changed the locks and everything, but I'm fucking scared for myself and now worried my family is also in danger. a 25-year-old woman living in Canada, and my 12-year-old half-brother Jake lives in Texas with my dad. Long story short, my dad had a child with another woman. Unfortunately, he is an extremely immature parent.
Right.
He tries to control Jake's contact by limiting it between me and my other siblings.
Creepy.
Won't go into too much detail, but luckily we both have found ways to keep in touch. So I'm just chilling, browsing on my phone, and I get a message from Jake on Hangouts.
Hey, Jake.
I didn't really want to talk to him at the moment because he was being rude earlier,
Oops.
but then he tells me he was scared.
Oh.
Jake isn't really scared easily.
Of
He's
what?
kind of an intense and mischievous kid, so when he told me that, I was concerned and asked him what's up. He tells me, there's someone that's been knocking on the door for a while.
Okay,
Mind
that's
you,
weird.
It's 10:30 on a Monday night, and when I
Mm.
asked where Dad was, Jake
Nope.
said he fucked off to the bar somewhere down the street.
Great, Dad.
So I asked more details. Is this
Yeah,
person
drunk.
just knocking or pounding?
Yeah.
He's pounding, Jake says.
Uh-oh.
And he
That's not
yelled,
good.
who's in here?
It's not a drug deal, is
I'm
it?
really scared.
Oh, no.
Oh, fuck. So I tell him to stay away from the
It's not
door.
a landlord, is
He
he?
needed to get to a phone and call the police as soon
Or
as
a debt
possible.
collector?
He then tells me that they don't even have a landline, and he doesn't have a cell.
Great.
Cool.
Thanks, Dad.
I guess my dad has Hangouts too, though, because Jake was able to reach out to him, and my dad apparently called the police from the bar and said that he'd be there shortly. I told Jake that I'd stay with him on Hangouts until someone arrived. He said he was still scared because this dark figure was walking around the front door and
Great.
pounding on it. He even said that someone drove by and the guy stopped, but continued after whomever drove by. This sent shivers down my spine as this person knew what they were doing and probably had some sinister intentions. I continued to talk to him and to let me know if help arrived. My uncle who lives down the street from there
Oh.
did come, and the cops eventually did too. Jake said once my uncle pulled up, the knocking ceased immediately.
Good.
My dad was still not present by the time they all arrived. Down the street my ass, I thought. I guess I should just be thankful my uncle lives in close proximity
Should be
to
glad
them.
that your dad called
haven't
at all.
heard much
You know,
since.
'cause the shitlord
Hopefully
out
I'll
here.
hear about something tomorrow. There wasn't much I could do besides read how scared he was, and that made me all the more angry with my dad
Yeah,
for leaving a
Dad.
12-year-old alone at this hour,
And
the
then
sick
not coming
fuck
back.
who clearly must have known someone was home. I broke up with an abusive ex 4 years ago.
Oh.
Since
well.
then, he hasn't stopped posting about me.
Ugh.
I know this sounds
Creepy,
arrogant,
abusive
and you're
shit.
probably thinking it's just vague posts that I'm interpreting a certain way because I'm a narcissist, but let me say my piece.
Okay.
The
Let's hear
people
it.
I've reached out to thus far were
Let's hear it.
skeptical at first, until I showed them the post and are now suggesting a restraining order.
Alright, let's see it.
I met
Let's hear
Joseph
it.
when I was 16. He was 22 at the time. My best
16,
friend's older
22.
brother.
Okay.
We
That's
started dating,
kind of
and
a
being young
age
and
gap,
dumb,
I
I
guess.
missed many glaring red flags. Trying to talk me out of going to a summer school program that would provide full tuition to my top choice university
because it would be away from
because I'd
him.
be away for 2 months, and I would fuck up college anyway. Never letting me hang out with my friends,
Oh, okay.
trying
He's
to
gotta be
convince me that
controlling.
everyone around me was a bad influence. I
Of course
wasn't
he
even
is,
allowed
you.
to go to my graduation party because he, like always, was afraid I'd cheat on him.
Oh,
Instead, he took
insecure.
me to Chili's and tried to talk me out of going to college, all the while calling me a dumb whore.
Oh, okay.
You get
Great.
the idea.
Abusive.
He was
Wonderful.
a deeply
abusive.
insecure man.
Yeah, you're very
Needless to
insecure.
say, our relationship didn't survive college. During my first semester, he demanded that I text him every 30 minutes and would call to yell at me if I didn't.
Okay.
I had to
He's
call
a
him
crazy
as soon
too.
as I was back in my dorm for the day and stay on the phone with him until he went to bed,
Okay.
often causing me to
Crazy.
stay up obscenely late to get my homework done.
I gotta study.
He came to visit twice when my roommates were gone.
I'm not a
Campus
hot
was
cup
close to
nori.
many venues, so I bought us tickets to see WWE live in the Lumineers. He still complained the whole time about how awful the city was.
Oh, of course
Later,
it is.
he asked that I give him $70 for tickets to go see Brand New in New York. We live in the southern state, by the way,
Okay.
and him getting the $35 in gas it took to come visit me was expensive for him. I told him no, because I was broke, which was true,
Oh,
since he wouldn't let me get
okay.
a job.
What? He wouldn't
I
let you
had
get a
used
job?
care basket money from my
Asshole.
parents to buy him the other tickets. He said I was a stupid bitch who didn't care about him.
Oh,
I
of course
decided
he is.
then and there that I would leave at the next opportunity. So I waited until a day when he was in a good mood to call and tell him it was over. Surprisingly, he was calm.
Oh, of course
Said
he
it was
was.
okay. but I was allowed to leave under the condition that neither of us date for a month and stay in contact with each other during that time.
I'm planning to kill you.
I agreed, because I was tired and just wanted this to be over.
That kind of calmness.
I realized it was stupid to let some crazy asshole who lived 3 hours away from me control me, though, and immediately began to hook up with someone else. I began flirting with a guy I was in a student organization with. It ended up not going anywhere because I was obviously shaken up and had no confidence.
Yeah, you
I didn't try to hide that I was interested.
You should have waited a month.
Commenting sweet things on his Facebook posts and tagging him in memes. You know, online flirting.
Of course.
I knew it was a bad idea because Joseph would notice and start a fight. On some level I wanted him to see. He was helpless to do anything about it and couldn't control me anymore.
Oh, she came back to control.
He did and started freaking out, saying I violated our agreement.
Yeah, just wait a month.
It's like our relationship never even mattered to me. He started stalking the guy's Facebook page, asking me all these details about him, saying he'd come up here and kill him. I gave a half-hearted apology, left the other guy alone, and laid low until the month was up. I finally sent Joseph a message saying that I complied with his request and to never contact me again.
No, you didn't.
Well,
you didn't
I guess whatever his plan was during that month didn't work out, because he threatened to come to my city and murder me. He said he'd burn my university to the ground and beat me to death. He'd physically threatened me before for wanting to go out, but not to this level. I didn't know what to do, so I blocked his number and all of his social media. I was too scared to actually go to the police, so instead, I told people back home that I'd reported him and given all the threatening messages he'd sent to the cops, so that they'd have it just in case something happened.
Did you?
I knew they would tell him and hoped it would be enough of a deterrent since he was terrified of cops.
Should really have
It seemed to work, and everything was cool for a year or so. I went to therapy for complex post-traumatic stress disorder, got a job, was living on my own, and generally enjoying the college experience. I was still terrified that he would show up, and was hyper-vigilant about looking for his car or friends when going out, but eventually let people talk to me into not worrying about it so much. My therapist was adamant about not checking his social media, which I agreed to.
Good point.
Another year passes. I began getting some strange friend requests on Facebook.
Don't add those.
One from Joseph's sister's ex-boyfriend, another from his aunt, another from some random girl currently attending our high school. I deleted and blocked all of them, figuring that he was stupidly trying to see my profile. I decided to make a fake Facebook to see if he'd been posting anything indicating plans to come to my city. Mostly generic, I'm so lonely and hate being single stuff, in addition to some posts talking about how controlling I was, but nothing alarming. Posts from his friends closer to the breakup, making fun of my hair, going to college, being a slut, whatever. Aggravating, but not dangerous.
Yeah, whatever.
Then I found his Tumblr, which was a lot worse.
Oh, Tumblr!
Lots of stuff spanning the last 2 years about feminazis, how all women are bitches, women who go out and party deserve to be raped and killed.
Oh, he's one of those guys.
All this crazy shit. Feminism was a big point of contention when we dated, so I am not sure if he was hoping that I specifically would see that, or if his misogynistic views just multiplied after the breakup. Some things I knew were directly about me, posting, "I still listen to all your favorite songs," on my birthday, which was a few months prior, a long post talking about how he was an abusive asshole in his last relationship and was trying to improve, and many lyrics from the mixtapes he had made me, tagged with "Ugh" or "Why am I like this?" I'm really freaked out now and show my roommate, the same one from freshman year.
Damn it.
She tells me not to worry about him and to not look at his posts anymore. Boyfriend says the same thing.
Okay, well,
both mention that even if he wanted to come and get me, he is too broke to actually do anything. They both say I shouldn't be concerned with this loser.
Yeah,
and I should look past his posts. I let it go and resume ignoring him. 2 more years pass. I would occasionally get a friend request from someone associated with him, which I delete and block.
Nice.
My fiancé and close friends would get some too.
Plot twist.
I told them to do the same.
It'd be funny if it was
I
the plot twist
created
that
an
he's trying to
Instagram
contact
and
you
had to make
because
it
his
private
friend
because
told him
his
he's going to
friends
make a
and some
death
fake
threat.
accounts I
That'd be a plot
suspect to be
twist.
associated with him began following me. I got weird messages from empty accounts asking for my address or to meet up somewhere. Bizarre, but at least they stopped. Around May of this year, I began to get worried again. It was close to graduation, and if he wanted to make good on his threats, it was now or never. I was to be married in April, and was scared that he would try something then. But it was a low-key affair, just the courthouse, and the details of which were not public. The graduation, however, was taking place downtown in the convention center, so all of the information was online for anyone to see.
Ah, shoot, why'd you do
A week
this?
before the ceremony, I get a message on Facebook from one of my high school friends. He said, Joseph wrote a song about you.
And he's
with
gonna
a
kill
link.
you.
I thought maybe she was just reading between the lines of some vague emo lyrics,
I don't know, let's go
but I
look at
logged
it.
onto my fake account to listen. There's no way that they were not about me. They referenced specific things from my Facebook profile, such as, you bought yourself a car for graduation. I recently bought a car with my husband, being
I've been
married
stalking
now
you.
and moving to a fancy apartment. We just upgraded to a new place since the old one flooded. It's interspersed with verses describing things we used to do together, driving on back roads, smoking cigars.
Okay,
I was deeply unsettled,
that's
but
not that
unsure of what to do.
specific.
I messaged my
No.
only other contact in that area to ask if he'd heard anything,
The
and he
car
said he
thing,
doesn't
very
talk to
specific.
that group anymore, but doubts Joseph would ever have the balls or the capability to do something. The next day I went back to listen to that song again for clues or something, but it was deleted. He uploaded a new one with lyrics that were even more vague, discussing making love on the couch, but not much else specific.
Yeah.
I kept monitoring his profile, and a few days later, Joseph posted a picture of an empty street at night with no caption.
It's
I
your
drove
street.
myself nuts trying to figure out if it was located in my city or not,
Yeah, good
but
point.
was
good
never
idea.
able to figure it out.
Yeah.
I thought about just not going to graduation, but I'm first generation and my parents would have been super disappointed. I decided to chance it since the arena had security guards and you had to go through a metal detector to get in.
Good point.
I ran
Okay.
through the emergency situations a million times in my head,
Top us use
just like
plastic
when we
guns.
first broke up, and I began to worry about him coming to find me. The whole morning I was anxious. I wasn't able to enjoy the ceremony as much as I'd like to have, dull as it was.
Yeah. It's
My
supposed to be
family was pissed
graduation.
off that I was so distant and not in the best of mood on the big day, but I knew they'd say I was being irrational if I told them why I was nervous. Regardless, the day came and went. Nothing happened.
I forgot to charge it.
It's been a month now, and I've had no friend requests, no weird posts from him,
Well,
nothing.
clearly
I
failed
deleted
in
my
his
old
weird
Facebook and made a
murder
new
attempt.
one that doesn't use my real name or pictures, just so I can remain in contact with my support network. I am aggravated that I'm back to where I feel the need to constantly check his profile to see if he's planning anything, thereby making me the creepy one. Maybe that's what he wanted all along, to stress me out and make me look crazy. I'm not sure
Have
what
your
to
friends
do from
monitor
here.
it.
It's been 4 years, and despite his posts, they've only amounted to internet shade, nothing physical. I'm questioning my own judgment, and I'm not sure if I have the right to be scared or not. I don't
Oh,
know
you should
how
be
he
still
got
be scared of
access
the
to what I'm
crazy you
posting
put
on
into your
Facebook,
life.
and I'm worried that one of my 2 friends from high school was feeding him information. I feel crazy and irrational.
And that is why
It's
we
hard
do
to
not
enjoy
friend
all
them.
the positive changes in my life because I'm so on guard about being spied on. I guess in that regard, he wins.
Yeah, just let your friends monitor his account, then you can not worry, and then they'd be like, oh, well, shit, he's being really, really creepy. What the heck?
A sheriff pulled me over 2 nights ago, noting that he knows my apartment complex well. Tonight he was parked there and followed me. He pulled me over for my headlight being out. I was nervous and shaking but didn't do anything wrong, just wasn't looking for trouble. When he asked, I just mentioned that I was headed to a party. He seemed nice and gave me some advice and also made note that I live in a specific apartment complex. I didn't think anything out of the ordinary. Tonight, I see a sheriff parked by our leasing office, and I pass him as I drive around near my entrance. I have to park farther away because spots filled up, and he ends up driving past me on the other side of the road I parked on. As I'm carrying groceries towards my complex, he drives by again slowly. I stopped walking as I lost sight of him behind some cars, and it sounded like he stopped accelerating in order to see me walk towards my apartment. Either way, he knows which building I'm in now, and if it was truly him following me, he certainly has access to my address information. I will update if anything else transpires, but I just needed to get this out there.
Wait, we're still talking about that guy, Joseph, or is this someone else? I wasn't paying attention.
I'm 5'0", maybe 110
5'0"
pounds at the time of the story. Blonde hair, blue eyes, fresh out of high school where I didn't date at all. I'd been asked, but I didn't feel like high school relationships lasted and I wanted to avoid the drama of it all.
Yeah.
Early in high school, I decided that my current job at a restaurant wasn't worth the paycheck and began looking for another job. An old coworker informed me that a big box retailer was hiring, and I eagerly applied because I had heard about how great their benefits and pay were. I was hired for the early morning stocking shift, 4 to 10:30 a.m. I arrived on my first day stupid early, but hopped up on adrenaline. It was August. Everyone was really nice to me. I was the youngest person in morning stocking by probably 4 or 5 years.
You're gonna get
I was also one
passed
of
out by
4
someone.
girls in the 20-person team.
It's a dating
But I
story.
busted my ass and did everything that was asked of me. I became the little sister to the crew, and I was on top of my little world.
Nice.
I've never had a friendly relationship with adults before, and I was very excited.
Yay.
A couple of weeks in, I noticed one of the guys from the food court hanging around the section I worked in. We'll call him Ryan.
Okay.
All of the produce that they would use came straight from the sales floor, and it was his job to pull the product being used for the folks that came in and prepped the food. At first, I thought that his schedule just lined up with mine,
Yeah.
but then I noticed that he was making an effort to get the things from my section when he knew I'd be there.
Oh.
We chatted, and I found out that he was only a year or so older than me.
Okay.
It wasn't long before he asked me out,
Oh.
and we officially started dating soon after.
Okay.
2 months after I started there, October, I got into an argument with the other person in my section
Okay.
and was transferred to the food court. I also moved from mornings to nights. I was annoyed because my last job was working with food, but I got to work with Ryan, so it balanced out.
Right.
Almost all the night crew were within 2 years of my age, so it was nice to have a familiar mindset around.
Okay.
We listened to music at night and generally had a good time. After a while, I forgot about how much I hated working with food.
Okay.
One of the people that worked the nights was Chad. He was average height, red hair, and generally looked like he was up to some kind of mischief all the time.
Right.
He was the same age as Ryan, and they were buddies, planning on being roommates after Ryan's lease expired.
Okay.
He immediately started being really nice to me, offering help when I didn't know a procedure, covering
'cause you're
shifts when I had
friends.
tests the next day, etc. I thought it was great.
Yeah.
My boyfriend and his roommate and I got along. It was
Yeah.
awesome. And then the joke started. It started with a simple, "I don't know why you date Ryan. I'm obviously so much better for you."
Uh-oh.
At work, when only Chad and I were working.
Okay.
I
Creepy.
laughed it off as friendly ribbing at Ryan's expense
Yeah.
and let the comment drop. A couple of days later, he said, "So, if you hadn't met Ryan first, you would have gone out with me, right?" I didn't answer. It hadn't crossed my mind that perhaps his niceness wasn't simply because I was his friend's girlfriend.
Maybe
He
because
didn't
he's
press the
interested.
issue then, but the next night, I started to notice that he would watch me at work. The food court was set up that the prep station was in the back. Ready food was in the front near the customer counter. I would turn around to grab something from the ready-made counter and see him watching me from the prep station.
Creepy.
One
Drake,
day I
stop
joked
it!
about him not getting any work done because he was just standing around, and he said, "I can't help it when you wear jeans like that." At that moment, I felt like I had been struck by lightning. It wasn't a huge comment. He didn't say anything vulgar, but I had never had anyone say anything like that to me.
Ew.
Even Ryan hadn't said something like that.
That's right. Cool.
I didn't know how to respond, so I just blinked at him and went back to work. Soon I switched registers with another coworker who had heard him, so I was out of his line of sight. I
Nice.
felt like his eyes were boring holes into my head anyway.
Mm-hmm.
It only got worse from there. The comments came every time we worked together. I told Ryan about it. This is January now.
And Ryan's like,
And he
oh,
told
that's
Chad
creepy.
to back
but
off.
Let's stop
Instead
it,
of
please.
deterring Chad, it made him more bold. He now said things in front of Ryan,
Okay,
and
that's
our
just
schedules crossed for an hour
Stop
or
trying
so.
to compete, you two.
The girl is too good for you. You don't deserve her. One day she's gonna wise up and pick me. I was so uncomfortable,
that's
but
just
being
mean.
18 and dumb to the world, I didn't know how to get him to stop. He had been with the company longer than
Besides,
me, and I knew
like, you
that
know.
they favored seniority over almost everything else. I thought that they would simply fire me, and I needed a job to pay for school. So I kept going to work, kept enduring the comments about my clothes and how they fit,
Ew.
how my eyes were the perfect blue, and how he
Ew.
knew I did sports in school because you just got that build. It went on for
Ew.
months. By now, almost everyone knows that Chad had this crush on me, except the
Just
new
being
girl.
an asshole about it.
Here's the turning point. It's now April. One day I'm at Ryan's apartment. He decided that rooming with Chad was a bad idea
Yeah.
and got his own place.
Yeah.
I was basically living there. I hear
Awesome.
my phone jingle and see a text from a number I don't recognize.
Is that your
It was something along the
girl?
lines of, "Hey, what's up?" I ask who it is and
Who?
get back, Chad, Kayla gave me your number.
Kayla!
My stomach drops. I show the text to Ryan, who says, I'm gonna beat his ass now.
God damn it, Kayla.
I tell him to shut up. He's not beating anyone up, and I text back, if I didn't give you my number, what makes you think I'd want you to get it from someone else?
Yeah.
I get back a sad face and, but now I can't compliment you outside of work.
Ew.
I tell him to
Stop
buzz
it.
off and ignore the text after. I confront Kayla the next time I see her at work, and she said he asked her because he wanted to switch shifts, but didn't have my number to ask. The text started coming in
Kayla, why are
every
you so
day.
naive?
Missed you at work. Thought about you today. Did you see the schedule? We're working together for 4 days this week. Every time my phone buzzed, my nerves jumped. Ryan was in a constant state of agitation. When I was at work, Chad stood too close to me, brushed
No.
against me too many times, commented about how
No.
nice my hair looked in a ponytail, how much smaller I was than him.
Ah,
I dreaded work.
stop that.
And
Creepy.
I finally broke
Creepy.
down crying one day when a supervisor asked me why I wasn't my usual bubbly self.
Because
He
I
was
have
really
a crazy
empathetic.
stalker.
He swore he was going to talk to Chad about it that night when he came in. That was my first night of reprieve. Chad kept his distance and avoided eye contact.
Is he apathetic?
It didn't last long.
Empathetic.
By June, he was back at it again. He showed up at a bowling day that a few of us had planned. We didn't invite him, but he found out about it and showed up anyway. I felt his eyes on me every time I went up to bowl.
Oh my gosh.
He waited until Ryan went to get a beer and said, "Watching you bowl is my new favorite thing."
Yeah.
I felt ill. I decided to leave after
Someone
Ryan
please fire
finished
him.
his drink, and as we were leaving, Chad called out to us, "I'm going to steal you away from him."
Nope.
I almost dropped to the ground as the panic arose in my throat. Ryan whipped around and stomped back to him, and I just turned around and stared back at him dumbly. I'll never forget, he had this big self-assured grin on his face as he watched Ryan come back. I felt like my body wasn't connected to the ground. All I wanted was to leave. I don't remember going back and grabbing Ryan's arm, but
Yeah, Ryan,
next
don't beat
thing
him
I
up.
knew, we were in his car, and he was spouting off all of his colorful swears. And then my phone buzzed. "I'm going to steal you away from him." That became his new favorite phrase. He changed it slightly to say to Ryan's face, "I'm going to steal her away from you." Even now, just typing out that sentence, I get
Ugh,
chills.
creepy.
And it was always with that same grin, that overconfident smile that always came after he said it. For unrelated reasons, Ryan and I broke up that September.
Aw.
I didn't tell anyone at work, certainly not Chad. I was dealing with my first breakup and taking it about as well as a 19-year-old can take it.
Yeah.
One day, a different supervisor than before came up to me and said in a sing-song voice, "I know why you're bummed out."
What?
I
Asshole.
looked at him with a wide-eyed and whispered, "Please don't." Chad was there, not 3 feet away. The supervisor
Supervisor's
got
an
this
asshole.
big grin and said, "It's because you and Ryan broke up."
What an asshole.
Chad's
you.
head shot up as I stared in horror at our supervisor.
This supervisor's an
I
asshole.
could feel Chad staring at me.
Now you're
My
gonna
body
make the
was
sexual
practically
harassment,
tingling
asshole.
with the intensity at which he looked at me. I hazarded a look at him, and we made eye contact. I
The
felt like a mouse
supervisor is
trapped
getting
in the gaze
fired.
of a snake. It was positively predatory. I went home early that
Does this
day.
supervisor realize
The
what he
text
did?
started that night. "How are you doing? I knew he wasn't right for you. Do you want to talk about it?
No.
You can come over here if you don't want to be
Don't
alone."
touch me.
I refused all requests. I didn't want to be around him, but he didn't relent. He started showing up
God,
where
date
I
a
was.
girl or something,
I
anything.
went to the grocery store to pick up some things and ran into him. I thought it was strange because he lived on the other side of town. My friend and I went to Victoria's Secret for their semi-annual sale, and after spending an hour in the store, we left with bags of goodies, only to see him conveniently hanging out
Date against your
outside.
sexual preference.
He said something about
Anything.
wishing he could see what was in those bags, craning his neck to look in. I said that it was for me and me only.
Yeah,
and
don't
he said,
touch me.
"For now."
Oh my
While
god.
my friend looked on in confusion, we immediately left and went home. Of course, I got texts that night about how he wished I would model what I bought for him. I didn't know how he was finding me around town. I never told him where I was going, and yet, there he was.
No.
I started scanning crowds of people automatically, searching for his face among the strangers. I felt anxiety leaving my house and made sure to tell no one about my school schedule. And yet, there he was, parked next to my car on campus in the same aisle of the grocery store that I've never been to, but picked because I saw him at the last one. Why didn't I tell my parents? The answer, because I was ashamed. I was ashamed of the fact that I couldn't handle the situation myself. One day in March, I decided to go to a popular bookstore. I had some birthday money burning a hole in my pocket, and there was some new manga I wanted to get. I got a text asking what I was up to today. I was expecting that from my sister. We were going to meet up, so I told her, I'm at the bookstore, spending birthday money. I didn't get a response for a few minutes, which surprised me, and I looked at my phone. My stomach leapt in my throat.
That wasn't your sister.
It wasn't my sister that had texted me. It was Chad. I felt like I couldn't breathe.
Good job.
I was an idiot. I gathered my things and made for the checkout line.
Get out!
As I was in line, Chad showed up. I made myself as small as possible, hiding behind a greeting card rack. I almost made it out, but he rounded a bookshelf just as I was paying, and I heard my name being called out. I cringed and grabbed my bag. He followed me to my car, asking me what I got, what I was reading, how surprised
get away
he was
from me!
that I answered him. I told him that I thought his message was for my sister, but that didn't slow him down. We got to my car, and I unlocked the door, leaning in to toss my bags of books into the passenger side.
And you got coming in your
My
butt.
goal was to tell him I had places to be and leave. I straightened up and turned around to do just that, and found his face an inch away from my own.
Ah!
I turned my face away from his mouth, which made contact with the side of mine, and leaned as far back as I could. What followed was the epitome of awkward. I stared at him, shaking and wide-eyed while he stared back, muttering, I'm sorry, and not much else.
Well,
I wanted to die, or faint, or throw up. All of those ideas seemed good to me.
Don't
I
want you,
said
Chad.
something
Stop.
along the lines of, I'm just gonna go now. And I got in my car.
Awkward.
He backed away as I drove off, and I went home, throwing myself on my bed and sobbing. I called out of work for a few days after that. A week or so after returning to work, and Chad hadn't texted me, hadn't talked to me. I thought I was free. I went
I wish
into
I
a
would
walk-in
too.
cooler to get milk. I remember clearly I was annoyed because the person that had stocked the fridge hadn't rotated the product, leaving me to dig in the back for the correct milk. I felt the cooler door close and turned to see Chad with his back to the door. I felt that familiar dread fall into me, and I turned to facing him,
He's not
asking
gonna lock
what he was
you
doing.
in the freezer, is he?
I don't like not talking to you, he said, taking a step toward me. I took a step back, dread turning to panic.
Nope.
The cooler door was huge and solid. There was no way someone was going to hear my shout. He suddenly crossed the distance between us,
rapist!
grabbing my arms and pinning them to my side.
No!
His momentum pushed me into the large shelves holding the food. Stars formed in my eyes as my head hit one of the shelves. I felt the cold of the metal bite into the exposed skin on my arm and creep into the skin covered by clothing. His face got really close to mine, and he said, Don't ignore me. I said I would steal you away.
Don't touch me.
I meant it. I felt like I was going to pass out. It was the same predatory stare as before. I felt a hot tear roll down my cheek, and he let me go, leaving the walk-in while I collapsed on the floor. I didn't go to work for a week. I was pulled into the office after going back to work by yet another supervisor who asked me about my dealings with Chad. I told him that he was a creep, but left our latest incident out.
Why?
He said that Chad had said some inappropriate things about his wife to his face and was going to write up an official letter of complaint. He said that if I wanted to, now would be the time to do it. I was scared. He assured me that this wasn't required, only if I was willing to. I went home that night and agonized over it. Would this finally make it stop?
Maybe.
Would it get worse?
Oh, yeah.
I wrote.
Those are good questions.
I wrote it all down, excluding the assault. I couldn't bring myself to write about it. Then it would be real. When I handed in the letter, I spent half an hour in the office crying because I was scared. They pulled Chad into the office. We didn't see him for a few days. I found out that they didn't fire him.
Oh,
They
shit.
did, however, tell him that if another complaint came in, they would. All I had to do was tell them. He worked mornings, I worked nights.
I see.
The text stopped. I stopped seeing him around. Soon his
Good.
crush became the food court joke. They didn't know everything, only that he had a crush on me and he didn't choose to hide it. The jokes helped in a way. They were always at his expense, and it made me feel in control of the situation. They gave him grief for it for years. I
Great.
met and fell in love with someone. He met and married a woman, and they had a kid. I ended up working with him for a total of 6 years before I moved on to another job,
Okay.
and he moved to another state. Not one person on earth besides myself knows the whole story about what happened.
That phone
Not
keeps
my
ringing.
family, not my fiancé, not my friends. Just me and a bunch of strangers on the internet.
Ooh, spoopy.
I work at the leasing office at a property in Texas. I also live on site. We have about 400 apartments and take up 2 sides of the street. I live across the street in the very back and try to keep to myself.
Go to
I don't
downstairs
like
and check
for
if there's any
residents to
messages.
know that I live
Don't
there.
answer unless there's
About
messages.
2 months in, a woman and her 2 grown sons lease an apartment with us. The sons are twins. One has special needs. The other is, well, different.
What does that mean?
He has a very
Socially awkward?
active imagination and is very focused on sex.
Oh.
Almost immediately after they moved in, things started getting weird. The first encounter. One day, I was crossing the
Hey,
street
that's the
after work to
same
go
one from
home.
the scary
As
stories.
soon as I reached the
I
other
was
sidewalk,
wondering, I was
I
like,
heard
that
a
sounds
voice
familiar.
call out, "Hey yo, Raquel!"
Raquel!
I turned towards the voice, which I realized was coming from the bus stop at the end of the street. I didn't recognize who it was until I got a little closer. Who the fuck is that? I think to myself. We met face to face, and I realized who it was from when he moved in. I knew he was a little weird, so I was trying to
what
keep
you
my
doing?
distance while still being polite. He's easy to piss off, and I don't know what he's capable of, and I don't want to make him think that there is anything behind the polite hello. He starts telling me that I just look like his baby mama who lives in North Texas.
A lot of things can be possessed by demons. You, me, that doll in the corner. This world is a strange one. I welcome back an old friend, Shivers, as the two of us share with you some allegedly true stories and real cases of demon possession. And this isn't just a bunch of people getting filled with some demon juice. No, there will also be a possessed object or two. So hop in the tub with the Bible and take a holy bath. You'll want a layer of protection before some demon possesses you, or something you hold dear. Also, don't forget to subscribe to Shivers if you like his narrations. But first, if you've got a creepy story from Tumblr, I would love to read it, and maybe even narrate it in a future video. Just send it over at darknessprevails.org. Now, let's see what demons answer this call. Number 1. A Paramedic's Tale of Demonic Possession. Submitted by Josh H. Let me begin by giving you a little backstory to this particular
19 more.
situation. It was a humid summer night in June of 2008 or 2009, around 2 a.m. I'm a paramedic in a very, very rural area. We have a population of about 22,000. That covers about 500 square miles. The service I work for covered all 911 calls during this time. I'd been a paramedic for about 2 years. Prior to that, I had been an EMT for 3. The majority of the calls we received were either shortness of breath, due to 50% of the community being retired coal mine workers with some form of COPD or emphysema,
That sucks.
and the rest being drug-seeking individuals with the occasional shooting, stabbing, or car accident. That particular night, I was dispatched to a call of a female patient who was hearing voices and seeing things that weren't there, according to her spouse. Around this time is when bath salts and all that synthetic medication stuff exploded,
So
and
she
people
might
were
be on
overdosing
drugs.
quite frequently. In my mind, I knew this was what was going on before I even left my station. Looking back now, though, I honestly wish it was just that. When I was given the address, I was kinda shocked. It wasn't in the usual slums that we pick up overdoses. It was in a part of the county that was known to have very nice homes of the working class people. Upon arriving to this person's home, it reassured my thought. The place was a well-kept 2-story brick house. When I knocked on the door and announced my usual greeting, "EMS, did someone call for an ambulance?" I was met by a 40-ish-year-old man.
Hello,
I did not need to ask where the patient was. Across from the room sat a female around the same age, just staring at us
Uh-oh.
with an empty glare.
Ooh,
It sent chills down my spine,
baby.
and the look on my partner's face, it told me he must have felt the same. The type of stare I've never witnessed again, just empty. I introduced myself and my partner,
Don't
and
kill me.
asked her name. Her eyes moved from my partner and looked me dead in the face.
Hello.
And with a voice that should not have come from a 130-pound female, she said,
"You are too late, Joshua.
What?
They are already here."
Oh,
the voice
okay.
gave me
Joshua?
goosebumps. I
Did you
shook it
introduce
off and
yourself?
I asked her who was here. She was still staring me directly in the eyes and had not blinked once, and she said,
Don't you feel us around you?
At that time, I had already decided I wanted to get the heck out of this house. All I felt was heaviness in that house. It filled me with unease. She had no medical history, or took any medications according to her husband, and she was a very healthy-looking individual. Things just didn't add up. I refrained from asking any questions and just walked her outside as quickly as possible towards my ambulance.
Get her out of there.
During this time, she's muttering to herself and whipping her head from side to side as if someone were speaking into her ears. I'm not a religious person at all, but this made me wonder if I was the right person to be taking care of this patient, and not a priest. I loaded her into the ambulance and began my normal assessment. She hadn't looked at me, but she was just shifting her eyes left and right, never looking at anything for more than 2 seconds. I took her vital signs. I applied a cardiac monitor, and I told her I intended on starting an IV on her. She suddenly stared at me once again and smiled with a malicious grin. Then she said,
Do what you please, boy.
Boy.
I've never felt in my life so weirded out
Oh,
by
definitely.
such a small woman. It was like looking into the eyes of evil itself. After starting the IV, I sat behind her, and I began the 10-minute transport to the hospital. All the while, I couldn't wait to get this thing out of my ambulance. All of a sudden, 5 minutes into the transport, she began chuckling in a low, deep voice that turned my blood cold.
Okay.
I moved back over in front of her and asked if everything was okay. I was met with that same malicious grin and silence. She wouldn't speak, and didn't for the remainder of the trip. About 2 minutes out, I called the local ER and informed them I was coming with a very unique patient. I
Suspicious.
personally knew all the nurses and physicians from working years alongside them.
They awkwardly go,
They laughed me off until they saw her with their own 2 eyes.
Like, oh, damn it,
She
man.
wouldn't speak, just grin and stare. They placed her on the same equipment I had put her on and returned to the nurse's station. I began to explain what had happened. They all got a good laugh at my expense as they could tell I was visually shaken.
See, creepy.
So I just told them,
Well,
if you
have
don't
fun,
believe
guys.
in evil, she will change your mind.
Or at least something creepy.
At that time, the monitor they placed on her that can be seen at the nursing station alarmed. Her respirations were 40 times a minute. Her nurse, who was a very good friend of mine,
Huh.
walked into the doorway of her room and just gasped and placed her hand over her mouth. She was petrified. Of course, curiosity got the best of me, and I went over to examine her myself. How I wish I would have just stopped there, just dropped her off then and ran back to the station. I couldn't believe
Did
what
she-
I was seeing. She was only touching the bed with the tips of her toes and the back of her head.
Creepy.
The entire body was in an arch,
She's doing
arms
the
laid
weird
flat
floating
beside
thing.
her, and her eyes locked on the 2 of us. She was panting in a way that sounded like a growl. We called the doctor into the room,
Help,
and we just
doctor.
said, "Oh my God."
She's doing
He
creepy
ordered
shit.
her a very powerful sedative called Versed, which is what they give you right before you have a surgery. 2 milligrams is plenty enough to put a decent-sized man to sleep for a while.
So did it not work?
She remained in this position for at least 5 minutes, but it seemed a lot longer. Her eyes were dark and empty. Her voice was otherworldly. My blood again turned to ice.
Yeah, nope.
She didn't fight at all when they administered the medication. 20 seconds later, she was asleep. Or so we thought.
And then she opens her
The
eyes.
doctor ordered a full head CT and blood work. I was pulled into her room by the nurses just in case she became violent or worse. I reached out for her arm to place a tourniquet to help draw lab work. As soon as I touched her skin, though, her eyes peeled back open. She stared at me with that same empty look as the nurse went to get another dose of Versed. 2 more milligrams, and she was still staring into my soul. I broke eye contact in hopes she would just go to sleep, but it never happened. The amount of medication could tranquilize anyone. We drew labs without
Don't
an
they
incident,
give her more or
all while
anything?
hoping
Just
she would
case.
test positive for something. Her lab work came back as well as her CT. Everything was negative. Nothing was out of the ordinary in the slightest way. She
Except
hadn't
being
even taken
creepy
a
as shit.
Tylenol. While we were discussing with the doctor what they would do next, The silence of this small town ER was broken by a blood-curdling scream, followed by words in a deep, raspy voice that I will never forget.
I am Legion.
Then
Oh my
silence.
god, I am Legion! Holy shit!
By then, I had had enough.
Please,
I
why do you have
returned
be
to
like
the
that?
station. I called the ER back about an
You're
hour
doing my
later
fan
to see if
fictions.
anything else had happened. She was transferred to a psychiatric unit about 2 hours away. I never cared to check up on her, and have no desire to this day. I pass that same home from time to time, and it sends shivers down my spine. This has become somewhat of a legend around the hospital. No one truly believes everything that happened.
Well,
For
okay,
the
but what
7
happened
people
to her,
who
though?
did witness what happened, there is no doubt something otherworldly was there. Just writing and recalling that night filled me with chills. It is one night I will never forget. That was the only time I looked at pure evil, and I hope it is the last. I'm 29 years old now and still work as a paramedic, and every time I get a call of someone hearing voices, I can't help but think about her. Number
I hope
2.
the person can
The
possess
Girl
Jack.
in the Corner.
Hmm.
Submitted by Lynn and read by Shivers.
I made a stupid mistake when I was 16,
Yeah.
and now, at 21, I have a 5-year-old daughter who we will call Sophia. I don't regret it though. She is the light of my
Oh,
life.
you mean light mistake
I
as
also
needed?
didn't end up like most other teen moms. I finished high school,
Oh, you're
and now
oops.
I have a stable job and a wonderful boyfriend that treats my daughter like she's his own.
Great.
About a year ago, I was sitting in bed surfing the internet on my laptop, and it was close to midnight. Also, my boyfriend worked night shifts, so Sophia, who was 4 at the time, and I were alone in the apartment. I was just about to go to bed when I heard loud crying from my daughter's room.
Oh.
I jumped up from my bed and rushed to her,
Dadaru.
but when I opened the door, Sophia was sound asleep in her bed.
Creepy.
I decided to ask her about it the next morning. Her response was,
What
maybe it
laughing?
was the girl in the corner.
What?
She gets a little upset sometimes. As
Oh.
if that alone wasn't creepy enough, after this conversation, Sophia became obsessed with the girl in the corner. She would scream if you even looked at the corner across from her bed. She had trouble sleeping, nightmares and night terrors, and sometimes she would sit in her room facing the corner, just staring.
Okay.
It got so bad, we took her to see a psychiatrist, thinking she had early onset schizophrenia. Then, about 3 months ago, I got a job offer that was better than my previous job. But it was on the other side of the city, so we decided to move. And as soon as we stepped inside the new apartment, Sophia's issues vanished.
Oh.
No more nightmares. No more girl in the corner. I even asked her about it, but she just gave me the most confused look, as if she had no idea what I was talking about.
Plot twist, she's possessed now.
I don't know what it was, but I'm glad it's over.
Number 3. Probation. Submitted by Scarolina.
Or the one where she was obsessed with
I'm
the
a
girl in the
male,
corner.
and
Maybe
I used
that
to
was the
work
girl
as
in
a
the corner.
juvenile probation
Plot
officer
twist.
for a southern state in the United States. As you can imagine, working in juvenile justice can be very unsettling. Some of these kids needed some help, and some needed intensive help. Then there were those that were monsters in the making.
Ooh, creepy.
One kid I met in that category was a kid I'll call Tony.
Tony Stark.
Tony was put on probation for a year on a drug charge for simple possession and fighting in school. He seemed like a nice kid though, quiet, very polite, always kept curfew, and did great in school. He kept all of his probation appointments, and most of his teachers really
They
liked him.
always seem like they're good.
Other than the drug charge and the fighting incident, he had no record. He was pretty much a model probationee. About 3 months prior to him finishing probation, he came in for a drug test, and unfortunately he failed the drug test.
Aw, shoot.
Even though I liked Tony, I told him that the drug test meant I had to file a violation of probation,
Yep.
or VOP, charge against him.
Yeah.
He begged me not to file the charge, but I told him he failed the test, so I had to file the charge.
Hopefully you didn't eat
That's
poppy
when
seed
things hit
muffins.
the fan, so to speak. He began mumbling something under his breath. I said, Tony, if you have something to say, speak up. Or something to that effect.
He's like, I'm gonna kill you.
So he says to me, ABC 987. And I said, what?
Oh, okay.
ABC 987 was his reply.
Oh,
I said, I don't know what that means. What are you talking about? ABC 987, now in a lower, more menacing tone, with a very creepy grin coming across his face.
Alrighty then.
Then it hit me. Tony was repeating my license plate number. Every time I'd gone to Tony's house or to his school, I was always in a state vehicle. And to my knowledge, he'd never seen me getting in or out of my car.
Oh,
And there were
shit.
several cars parked in the parking area.
So he knows your
all
personal
belonging
car.
to the building I worked in, because it shared a parking area with about 3 other medium-sized office buildings. The look on my face must have told him that I knew what ABC 987 meant, because his eyes lit up, and his smile became even more sinister. As an aside, I've had to deal with some insane kids. Kids that made plans to kill other people. A kid that liked to drink animal blood.
Oh,
Kids that
alright.
raped people. I even performed an initial assessment on a kid that was planning on doing a school massacre and filming it for the internet.
Ah.
But nothing has creeped me out as much as that smile did at that moment.
Oh, time to
I will be the
report his
first
ass.
to admit that all professionalism went out the door at that moment, and I began to yell obscenities at him. My boss came into the scene, and he had Tony escorted out. Then he talked to me.
Yeah.
After I told him about telling me my license plate number, she decided to file an additional charge of making threats to a public official against Tony.
Yeah.
Because it was clear to her what he was doing. I testified at the
Being
hearing
cray-cray.
about a month later, and yes, he was not locked up during that time, so I was fearful that something might happen.
Yeah.
The judge sentenced him to an inpatient psychiatric hospital for an evaluation. That would be followed by
Oh,
another
shoot.
hearing and further
Oops.
recommendations based on the
That's dumb of me.
evaluation. Right before he got out of the psychiatric hospital, I transferred to another department with the state. However, I heard that right before he left the hospital, they found a list in his room with the judge's name, my name, and his public defender's name, the prosecutor's name, and some teachers' and students' name,
Ew.
all with the words, altar sacrifice, written on the page.
Altar
Needless to
sacrifice.
say, at the hearing, which I was permitted to attend, normally juvenile hearings are closed to the public.
Oh,
The
that one's
psychiatrist
going
that prepared Tony's evaluation recommended that he be sentenced to the state hospital for an extended period of time, which the judge agreed with.
Yep.
I hope Tony was able to get the help that he needed, and I hope that he turned out all right. But one thing it taught me is that
Don't
sometimes
trust
even a
crazies.
monster can hide in plain sight and under the guise of innocence, and that the most horrible and creepiest monsters out there are human beings. Though I'm not sure if Tony was a human, a demon, or something of a host for a spirit
Or a
far
weird
more sinister than I
sadist.
bargained for. Who knows if that was really him, or something that has attached itself to him. Number 4. My Beloved Doll. Submitted by Clara. Read by Shivers.
So, it's been a long time since this happened, so please excuse me if I forget to mention something that did happen. I've dealt with multiple paranormal things in my life, from a ghost of a little girl to some sort of hate-feeding demon.
Hate feeding
But this
demon.
story I'm about to
Boy.
tell you was sort of close to me. I used to have a haunted Krusty doll. A little backstory. Since I was little, I have always loved watching The Simpsons.
Ooh.
My favorite character being Bart for his antics and
Yay.
twisted sense of humor when it comes to watching cartoons.
Yeah, Bart's weird.
So when I had found a Bart doll, along with Krusty the Clown and Marge inside an antique mall that was just outside my town, my mom said I could pick out two, knowing that I loved the show so much.
Ah, that's cool.
I had picked Bart and Krusty, cause for whatever reason, Marge was missing her dress.
Okay, that's weird.
I've had these dolls for years, and never noticed anything strange
creepy.
about them.
Also creepy.
Until I was 14 or 15 years old, when my life started getting really hard, having to move a lot. My parents fought, and my mom and sister treated me like shit,
Aw.
and I developed a really bad problem. I was so incredibly lonely and hurt, I would go to my plushies for comfort. Snuggling them, or just having them near me while I played video games, would make me feel better. So as my 15th or 16th birthday started getting closer, my mom asked me what I wanted. So, I told her I wanted a plushie of Dr. Eggman from the Sonic the Hedgehog series. 'cause he was my favorite.
Yeah. You have all
After a
favorites.
month or so, I had got him in the mail. Then, of course, I had added him to the collection on my bed.
Everyone
But
gets
things
a thing.
started getting weird after this. I would find my new plush in other places like on the floor, or under my bed, or even sometimes across the room.
Ah.
One night, I just held onto my new plush, 'cause I was tired of having to find it every morning.
Eggman.
But when I woke up,
possessed.
I was holding onto my Krusty, and my new plush was at the closet door on the other side of the room. At this point, I was a lot more aware of the paranormal activity with this doll. I started leaving the doll on the other bed that was in my room, but when I'd come back, it would either be fallen over, or on the floor in between the beds, or back on the bed I slept on, where it used to sit. Currently, I don't have it in my possession. Due to moving so much, I had left it in storage.
Oops.
The storage place sucks, so I won't be surprised if it's eaten by rats now.
Number 5. Tormented by an evil spirit. Submitted
That
by
crusty doll didn't even hurt the
Anonymous.
Eggman doll. I think it just wanted friendship.
A little background is necessary so you can understand how it relates to what has happened. I am a Wiccan, and I'm no stranger to the occult or spirits. Strange things that scare most people happen around me all the time, so most weird things don't really frighten me. I don't like to tell too many people that I'm Wiccan. I would rather do what I do and be left alone. That being said, I do help people when they have problems of the spiritual kind. In October of 2016, I was on Facebook, and I saw some sort of advertisement for a movie about children and Ouija boards. It was getting to be Halloween time. I did a post about it and tagged one of my friends, who was also a practitioner. I was being facetious when I did it, because movies like this annoy me and my friend both. There's always some skeptic out there that thinks it's a child's toy. They end up getting one just to prove that it's only a game.
Nah, I
Then they
wouldn't.
come to find out the
true
hard
that.
way that it can be something much darker. And then in the end, they end up no longer being skeptics. Ouija boards easily open doorways that at times are harder to close. They open gateways on the other side, and anything can come through. If you don't know how to safeguard yourself,
Didn't a lot of
if you
people
don't know how to
start
close
using
these
Ouija
doors,
boards after
you can find
the
yourself
movie
in
came out?
serious trouble.
Yes, that movie's no good.
Susie, a woman whom I am friends with and used to work with, made a comment on my post saying that I shouldn't post things I don't understand. She didn't know I was Wiccan, and she did not know I was actually criticizing the Ouija board post.
Yeah.
I private messaged her and told her I actually knew a great deal. She then went on to mention that she used one when she was a teenager,
Oh, great.
and stated that because of that, she's had experiences that have affected her to this very
Why
day.
did you do that? Don't
I
use
asked what she
weird
meant by
things.
that. She was extremely reluctant to tell me because she was scared that I would think her crazy. She even told me that she told a priest of her faith about her experiences, and he said that her troubles were that of the mind and not the spirit.
What an asshole.
Basically, the arrogant guy was politely telling her she was insane.
What a
After some
dingus.
reassurance with me, she went on to tell me about her living hell.
Schizophrenic
She told me
insane
that she
asshole.
used to have friends when she was younger that meddled with the Ouija board all the time. But what she did not realize at the time was that they were purposely summoning dark spirits. Susie's mom never let her leave the house after a certain time, but one night she let her go out, and she went to her friend's house to
Darn
hang
it.
out because her friends were having a party. They pulled out the board and started doing and saying some very strange things. The moment she saw that board, she was filled with dread and felt a chill in the air.
Probably because it's a
One of
creepy
her
board.
friends came in holding a coffer, which she assumed to be red wine, and he offered it to the group. She saw everyone drinking from it, and since she was a huge germaphobe, she refused.
Yeah, nope.
What happened next felt like a huge nightmare. It has severely impacted her to this day.
Are you guys doing
She
demonic
found out later that
sacrifices?
the coffer was filled with the
Blood.
sacrificial blood of
Ew.
a cat.
Gross.
She later discovered
Whose cat is
this
that?
because she found the body of a gutted cat outside.
Ew, what the hell?
She was horrified.
Gross.
Later on, she confronted her friends about the cat and the drinking of its blood. She wanted to understand what they were trying to do, and why they didn't tell her what was going on.
And also, why did you kill
They
that cat?
probably didn't tell her because knowing Susie, she would have noped out of there really fast.
Well, she didn't
When
do
she
it in the
demanded
first
to know
place.
what they were doing, she didn't really get a straight answer. Her relationship with her best friend
Come on.
that hung around with this group of people became strained from this experience and soon got toxic. She stopped talking to her shortly after.
Yeah, because she's
She
crazy.
would see the members of this group in the hallways at school, but Susie never talked to them again. The backlash from that incident didn't end there. She told me nothing was ever the same after that night. Soon after, strange things began to happen to her and around her. Something stuck with her, something attached itself to her that
Ew,
night,
gross.
and it has stayed with her ever since.
Darn it.
She told me it didn't matter where she was or where she went. Whatever it was followed her. She told me that she has learned to live with it and ignored it, but others around her were starting to have experiences and it was scaring them. She told me of an instance where she fell asleep with the webcam on.
Oh, yeah?
She was talking to her cousin late at night one evening. She suddenly woke up because her bed was shaking. She sat up, and her cousin told her she heard a man's voice coming from the laptop, and the picture on her end went out.
Oh.
She told me that that wasn't possible. She was the only one in the house at the time. There would be nights where she would open her eyes from sleeping and see something watching her. When she did this, she couldn't move. It was a scary-looking man who would soon disappear before her eyes. She told me that one of her friends absolutely refused to come over anymore, because weird things always happened when she did. Susie told me of another night where she went to her mom's house. Susie, her mom, and her nephew were all heading out, when suddenly they heard a man with a very deep voice call her name.
Susie.
Stop it.
She looked around to see who it was. She looked at the window, and there it was standing. It was there only a
Here's
moment,
Johnny.
and then it
Johnny,
disappeared. Her
Thanks,
mother
Drake.
didn't see it, but she definitely heard it. Her mother knew something strange was in that house, and it terrified everyone. Susie said other than her, only her nephew has ever seen it. Everyone else has only heard of it and felt its presence. Now, these kinds of experiences have been going on since she was in her mid-teens. At the time of her telling me this story, she is now in her late 20s. I decided that I was going to help her rid herself of this spirit. I
Oh,
told her
cool,
that I
friend.
was Wiccan, that I have experience with these kinds of matters.
Oh, yeah? Well, then go
I was
for
going
it.
to help her get rid of this possession or attached entity. I had this conversation with her the evening of October 30th of 2016.
Yay.
After I said goodnight to Susie, I tucked in my daughter and got ready for bed. My husband at the moment was already sleeping. I was in bed by 8:30.
Oh,
At exactly
gonna
midnight,
harass you now, asshole.
officially Halloween, I heard the radio clock go off in the second bedroom on the other side of my house. It was loud, and I was surprised that it didn't wake my husband or my daughter.
oh, we're totally gonna next
That bedroom is a guest room, and no one sleeps there on a regular basis. So I had no idea what that sound was. I didn't have any guests that night,
Personal.
so there was no reason why it should have been going off. I got up quickly and went to the other bedroom and turned on the light. There was the alarm clock blaring loud music at exactly 12 a.m. I turned it off, and right at that moment, the hairs on the back of my neck stood up, and I was covered in goosebumps.
Creepy.
I felt a dark presence in my house. I knew exactly what it was.
Yeah, pretty
It
obvious.
must have been Susie's friend trying to scare me.
Yeah,
Well,
well,
I wasn't scared. I was angry,
yeah.
and I told whatever it was to get out.
I'm coming for you.
Soon after, my goosebumps went away, and the tingling on the back of my neck subsided. I'm surprised I didn't wake my husband or my daughter with my outburst. I went back to
Angry
bed
yelling.
angry and irritated. The next day, I heard from Susie
He's
again.
funny, I like her.
She was telling me that the spirit had been tormenting her, and that it was worse than it has ever been.
Well,
She
he
told me
knows
that it
he's
was
getting
shaking her
screwed.
bed, clawing at her, and at one point had thrown her up against the wall and knocked her to the floor.
Oh, we're
I told her that I knew it would get angry with her, because she is talking to me and we are trying to get rid of it.
Yeah,
And I told her
Come
about
for
it
him.
visiting me the previous night.
we're coming for him.
She apologized, but I told her not to worry.
Yeah, don't worry
It did
about
not scare me. I immediately went out and got her a kit to do a smudging of her home and herself. I also made some anointing oil. I explained to Susie
Nice.
that she needed to do the cleansing to empower herself. Susie later came over to my house to obtain the things needed to do the cleansing that I had acquired for her. When I saw her, she told me that the entity was trying to keep her from visiting me at all.
Because he's a little bitch.
Apparently, her car wouldn't start that day. She also had problems with her computer, and she hasn't been
Like I said,
receiving
he's a little
messages on
bitch.
her phone. I asked if she wanted me to come over to her house to help her with the cleansing. Susie is a very determined woman, and despite her haunting, she's a very strong one too. She assured me that I had
Yeah.
given her enough detailed instruction, and that she did not need me there.
Should be good.
So Susie went home, and I didn't hear from her. I texted her the next day to see how things were, and she informed me that she didn't sleep that night. When she attempted to smudge her home, the feather burst into flames, and she was unable to do the cleansing. If the evil entity burned her smudging feather, then that was my fault. I didn't
Oops.
even think to bless the smudging kit itself.
Oops.
The spirit tormented Susie all night.
Do it again.
She told me she was at work at the moment and was too scared to go home. She was now going on 48 hours without sleeping.
Time to do
I told her
it.
to come to my
Bust the
house,
feather.
that she would be safe in my home, and that she could sleep here.
'Cause I
She
busted.
declined, but
Oh.
wanted to know what to do. I told her to get another feather, and to get holy water and sprinkle that on her kit,
'Cause
and ask
obviously
God to
this
bless it.
dingus is a dingus.
She did that, but she knew she would be too tired to perform the cleansing that night, and she was still scared to go home. She asked again what she should do. I instructed her to command the spirit in the name of God to leave her alone and give her peace. So the next day I texted her and asked if she was okay. She replied back that she was at work, and she did exactly what I told her to do. She slept peacefully the night before, for the first time in a while.
Oh, well, good.
I was relieved. A few days later, Susie called me, telling me that she got a call from her mother. Her mother told her that she heard loud noises and banging coming from Susie's old room.
Okay, now he's just being an
When
asshole.
her mom went to investigate, Susie's old stuff was all over the place. It looked like a tornado had ripped through the room.
Like I said, now he's just being an
Apparently, the
asshole.
spirit had taken refuge at her mother's house after
Oh.
the cleansing,
Okay, now
and
time
it
to
made
bless
sure to
everything.
make its presence known. Luckily, though, it
You
did
can
not
stay
bother
there.
her mother. It simply attacked that room. Susie was upset, and again
Be
she
mad.
asked me what to do. So I walked her through how to cleanse that part of the house.
Stay out of our
After
house.
that, weeks went by without incident. Then Susie and I met up for some Thai for an early dinner a couple of weeks later.
Yum.
When she came to pick me up, we began to talk, and she told me that there was another incident with the entity.
Oh, great.
But it wasn't at her mom's house or her home.
Is it her friend's
She
house?
was visiting a friend's house when her friend's brother came running out of his room
knew it.
screaming. He was yelling, "It's moving! It's moving by itself!" Susie and her friend ran into her friend's brother's room, and lo and behold,
Ah.
and of course he had been using a Ouija
Oh,
board.
damn it, dude.
Susie and her friend watched in horror and disbelief as it spelled out, "I will never leave you alone,"
Oh, go
over
away,
and
asshole.
over again.
Stop being
Susie
so
ran
clingy.
over to
You're
the
worse than
board and said,
ex-boyfriend.
"Leave me alone and go away." She flipped the board over,
Yeah.
and when the activity stopped, she threw it
Table
away in
flip.
the garbage. Even though her friend's brother was angry at her for doing that,
Well, maybe
she
she
yelled at
play
him
around,
to never use a
stupid
Ouija
boards,
board again.
asshole.
She didn't have any problems after that. And after hearing that story,
Screw
I
your
couldn't help but think,
$10.
oh, for God's sake. Now, I know there are those out there listening to this story, not believing a word of it, or thinking me and my friend are crazy. And that's okay.
I won't mess with.
I hope those
luck
of
or
you
anything,
listening
those
that think
superstitious
that
stuff.
never
Just
have an
whatever.
incident to change your perception. Ouija
It was
boards
true
are
or
never
not, I
to be
still won't
used
play
by
with those
children
things.
or most adults for that matter.
Who wants to
They're not toys,
pretend to do
and
do
serious
those
harm
anyway?
can come to
Eek.
those who simply play with them.
No thanks. I'm not gonna mess around with stuff that could be real, you know?
Demon possession does not happen often, and it might even be a sort of disorder in some cases. But anything, living or not, is susceptible. But would you even know when something else is living in your skin? Would you know when it happens until it's too late?
And then you can't
Maybe,
speak?
maybe
Shboop,
not.
shboop.
Just ask a friend if you've been spider crawling down the steps lately,
Oh,
and
okay.
you might have an answer.
Hey, friend,
Good
have I
night.
been doing some weird shit
Be sure to
lately?
like, share, comment, and subscribe if you
No.
enjoyed the video. And subscribe to Shivers if you like what he's got. Don't forget to send us your Tumblr story soon at darknessprevails.org. Thanks. Subscribe now for a chance to win a $20 Amazon gift card at the end of the month. All you gotta do is stay subscribed and comment on the video and the card above. The Boy and Girl Scouts are brave souls, venturing door to door or into the woods, barely
Oh,
escaping
this is
from
like the
monsters and
pizza delivery
murderers
people,
alike.
Except with kids.
This world is a strange one. Entering the Scouts is a great way to learn skills to help you survive and live anywhere. Plus, the Girl Scouts is a fantastic way to get into the cookie dealing business. But when you're not enabling
cookie-dealing
people's
drug
cookie
business.
addictions, you might be in the middle of a strange place, learning new things. All the while, someone or something is preying upon you. So,
Creeping
to the
on
brave
your-
boys and girls out there, I salute you and wish you luck. Enjoy these allegedly true Boy Scout and Girl Scout scary stories. But first, if you've got a Craigslist story or a Tumblr horror story,
Grab it
I'd love to hear
properly.
it and maybe even feature it in a new video. Just go to darknessprevails.org to share your story today.
Okay,
Now, are you ready to earn your I almost freaking died badge? Number 1. Monster in Maine. Submitted by Joe K. I am in the Boy Scouts, and my troop, which is from New Jersey, recently ventured to Maine for summer camp. The first day we checked in and got into our cabins. The cabins weren't new, but that was better. They had those old screen doors and windows. It seemed rustic and genuine. There were bunk beds on opposite corners of the cabins. I got bottom bunk, so I could see the door while my other 4 buddies got the others. One night I had to go pee, and still being scared of the dark at the time, I woke up one of my friends so he could come with me. While I was doing my business, my friend looked the other way to give me some privacy.
Thanks,
So
friend.
when it happened, he didn't see what I think I saw. Whatever it was, I almost mistook it for a tree, because the branches or the arms of this thing had different lengths. I looked away, then looked at the same place again. But it had moved. It wasn't in the same place now. I never saw it move, but I knew it had, and I tried not to think too much of it. I was kind of creeped out in the dark anyway. I was praying that my eyes were just playing tricks on me. So I finished up, and we both headed back to the cabin. The next night, after I was deep asleep, I woke up in the middle of the night with the strongest and strangest feeling that someone was watching me. It was one of those times when you wake up and know you're not going back to sleep. Except this time, I saw something that made me want to scream as loud as I possibly could. But I stopped myself, because I thought if I did scream, I would die. The door of our cabin opened both ways, push or pull, and I could see something outside the door, moving closer towards it. The silhouette of whatever it was looked exactly like the tree thing from the night before. I felt like I had to do something. Who knows what it would do if it got in the cabin? So I forced myself up, and I moved my footlocker in front of the door to prevent it from opening. But whatever that thing was outside the door, it never even tried to open it. It just stared at me, and I was literally petrified. I couldn't move until that thing finally left. I watched its massive asymmetrical silhouette walk away slowly back into the woods. A few minutes after I couldn't see it anymore, I finally walked slowly back to bed, in shock from the whole ordeal. I laid there, eyes wide, staring at the bunk above me, wondering what the heck was going on. No one had ever told me or prepared me for something like this. The next morning, I was hesitant to get up, but when I finally did, I ran outside to where the thing had been standing, and I looked down to see tracks. These tracks had 4 toes and what looked to be a claw on the back of the heel. I expected to see them up to the door, and then leave down back into the woods, but I saw that they circled around the cabin several times. This creature, all night, it must have been watching us, observing us, through nothing but screen windows. I didn't tell my scoutmaster, because I knew he wouldn't believe me. And the very next night, I was begging my friend for the top bunk. I thought it would make me feel safer. Once we traded, in the morning my friend told me he saw something. He said he saw the strangest looking animal he's ever seen. I thought about my reply for a second, and I ended up saying that I did not believe him.
Why?
But I think I was just trying to keep him from getting as scared as I was.
Okay.
But I did believe him, and
Well, I
I will
hope
never
so.
forget what I saw.
Otherwise, you just screw with them.
Number 2. Cookies or Creeps. Submitted by Nova Lee.
I would prefer some cream, thank you.
Are you sure you want to spend the night? My mother had asked. We were supposed to go to some Girl Scouts event together, but I had been at my Girl Scout friend Carly's house all day, and she was begging me to stay the night. Carly and I looked at each other. This had been the first time I'd been to her house. I was 7, and it gave me pounding anxiety to even think of spending my time somewhere with a new friend. Though the both of us spent hours together at school, somehow this was different. Silently we agreed. It would be an unofficial Girl Scout sleepover.
Everybody
Yes, I
has
do,
friends.
I replied casually. Then I moved to the couch. All right, honey, I'll be back over with some of your clothes in a little bit. I love you. Bye. My mom
Yeah,
smiled
bye,
and
Mom.
left. Okay, so what do we do now? Carly asked.
Stare
Both
at
of
the
us
wall.
sitting on the couch. You want to watch some YouTube?
Hey.
She stood up, turning on a computer of some sort, and typing something in. After a while watching some YouTube videos, another girl came by. I don't exactly remember her name, so let's just call her Jane.
Jane.
Jane seemed a bit older than the both of us. Apparently another scout, though. She brought some food, and we continued to watch YouTube together, until Carly left the room to get something. I sat in the middle of the room, next to the fireplace, because I was shivering. It's not that cold in here, Jane remarked, which was odd, because I felt freezing. Then Carly came back. She was holding a rather large piece of cardboard, a quarter and a marker. She sat on the carpet and began to draw something.
4 more.
I had no idea what it was, but I now recognize it as a makeshift Ouija board.
Oh, damn it.
Nova, she said. Put your hand on this, she told me after
Stop
drawing
doing
out
this
the
stuff
Ouija
at
board,
sleepovers.
and
That's
she
not
placed
fun.
the quarter in the middle. She said a few ritualistic-sounding words, and then began to ask questions. Questions about random stuff, like what we had for breakfast, and
Let's
what
watch
the
a
demon's
movie
name
or
was.
something.
We played that for a while. The whole time I swear it was getting colder by the minute, and something just felt wrong. When we were bored of that, Carly put on a movie, and we made a bet. Whoever was to fall asleep first was going to get whipped cream on their face.
Yeah.
Of course,
Okay, that
Jane
sounds
fell
pretty good,
asleep
though, actually.
first, but we really didn't do it.
Oh.
We weren't that cruel. Soon
that'd be
Carly
great
fell
to have whipped
asleep
cream on
too,
your face, though.
and I was the last to pass out. We all woke up at the same time, with freezing cold water on our faces. Mind you, before we ever fell asleep, we were teasing each other about ghost or demon boyfriends, Zach, Jake, or Isaac, etc. But deep down, the whole Ouija board and demon thing really scared me. Jane quickly dismissed it and went back to sleep, while Carly
Oh,
and I,
darn.
too afraid to go to the bathroom alone, went together, only to rush back after we were done, to find Jane covered in Mountain Dew and still sleeping. This was weird. If it was a
Well,
prank,
this-
I
okay,
knew
this
Carly
ghost
wasn't
having a
doing
good
it.
time.
She had been with me. And if Jane had poured Mountain Dew on herself to get at us, it was a bit much for such a messy prank. So eventually we went to sleep again, thinking it was nothing and just a cruel prank played by one of us, or I guess I was hoping it was a prank. But we woke up again later in the night, this time covered in warm water. I didn't know exactly what was happening,
Okay,
but
that
it
has
brought
ghost
me to
having a good
tears.
laugh.
I swear I woke up
He's
to the
pranking
feeling of
you, don't
someone's
worry.
hands on me once, only to see that there was no one around
Casper,
me.
what are you
We
doing?
all forced ourselves to sleep, and the next day when I left, I never came back. I was never going to spend another night at Carly's.
Maybe Carly shouldn't be summoning the demons.
Number 3. Werewolf in the Woods. Submitted by Piano Man. Let me start off with some background info. I'm 13 now, and this happened when I was 10. My family owns about 200 acres of dense forest, and every year, we let a Boy Scout troop do a turkey cookout on our land. It's all good fun. One day, my dad, brother, and I were preparing for the cookout. I believe it was around November. The scouts were there and camping, and my dad and brother were going to join them, but I wasn't. At one point that evening, we were bringing supplies up with a four-wheeler and an old trailer for the scout troop. The path has many rocks, and the trailer doesn't go very fast on this path. The path itself is about a quarter mile, and takes about 15 minutes to get from start to finish. We got there at about 3 o'clock, and had a little fun with the scout members, which I'm friends with. We were there until about 9 o'clock, when we decided that it was time to head back. It was quite dark, except for the full moon, slightly lighting up the woods brighter than usual that night. My brother likes to carry around a BB gun, which he had with him strapped to his shoulder this night. My brother and I were in the trailer, and my dad was driving. I'm not a big fan of being in the woods at night, but I'm definitely going to think twice after this night. We were going about 8 miles per hour. Like I said earlier, this trailer can't drive very fast on this path at all. After a few minutes of driving, I began to hear soft thuds in the woods. I start to look around, expecting to see someone. It sounded like it was coming from a large animal, a person or maybe a bear. The thuds repeated for a few minutes, and no, it started to sound like footsteps. I was almost certain it was a person. Whatever the thuds were, it was getting closer. Once again, I tried looking for whatever was making these thuds, What I saw next almost gave me a heart attack. A creature, running on 2 legs covered with hair with glowing eyes, was running through the woods on the side of the path. It was only about 100 feet away. I yelled for my dad to hit the gas and to drive faster. He asked me what was going on, and I yelled back to just drive fast. My heart was pounding, and I've never been so scared before in my life. The creature began to get closer and closer. My fear got the better of me, and I grabbed my brother's BB gun. It was already pumped, and I took a shot at it. The trailer was bumpy, so I missed.
Damn it.
I pumped the BB gun fast. I tried another shot, but this time I got it, whatever it was, because it just stopped dead in its path. I turned around again, and I told my dad once more to step on it.
You pissed it.
And when I looked back, it was standing on 2 legs and was looking directly at me.
Probably because you just
My
shot
brother
it.
saw it and screamed, asking what the heck that was. I didn't reply. I was so focused on this creature.
I'm shooting at
It
it.
had to have been 7 feet tall, with long arms and pointy ears. My dad finally listened though, flooring it. We got home in about 2 more minutes. My dad asked what the issue was, kind of upset that he had to risk the trailer just to speed up. I told him there was something dog-like with lots of fur and was about 7 feet tall. My dad agreed that I saw something, especially after my brother screamed, but not that it was 7 feet tall. My dad called the Scoutmaster's cell and even warned them about the creature that I saw. They said they'll keep an eye out for it. After that, my dad and my brother stayed at the house. I didn't sleep a wink that night. The next morning, the Scoutmaster came down to our house. He told us that they had heard howls a couple of times during the night.
Man.
He also said, on his way down here, he saw large footprints that looked like a wolf's. These were Boy Scouts. They know their footprints and study them.
Oh, that's a
And
good
what really
point.
puts chills up my spine is that it may have resembled a wolf, but he said that there was no exact match for it. At that point, he looked as scared as I was. What the Scoutmaster said that day and what I saw, it still scares me, and hopefully I will forget about my encounter with this so-called werewolf.
Oh,
I'm
where's the
very
werewolf?
sure that that night was definitely a full moon.
Oh.
And number 4, The Alligator Beast, submitted by Weston B. I can say flat out, I only know one other person who's seen what I saw, and she refuses to talk about it. There is local lore, though, about a monster living in the river, but the description doesn't seem to match up completely with what was reported several decades ago. I would have thought I was hallucinating, had it not been for how vivid the experience was. Over the years where I live, there have been several encounters with this thing, and all seem to be the same type of being, or maybe even the same individual. I'm currently 18 years old, and I'm an intern part-time at a paleontology museum while I'm enrolled in college to work towards a degree in zoology and paleontology over the next 10 years. I know it doesn't sound like the most experienced or trustworthy credentials, but I can say safely I have absolutely nothing to gain from any of this, as you will be the first people I've told who aren't involved.
Oh, well.
The first sighting was 3 years ago in mid-March during spring break. It wasn't as much what I saw as I saw what likely was left by it.
What?
I
Oh,
live
dead
on a canal
carcass?
system that feeds directly onto a large river system that spans mostly to the eastern side of Florida,
Well, it's
called the
really
St.
windy
John's
out.
River Delta.
Ooh.
Often wildlife that lives in the river frequently come up into the canals for a number of reasons.
Right?
Fishing birds, dolphins,
Yeah,
gamefish,
for
manatees,
food, right?
even bull sharks and alligators on occasion.
Covered in food.
It's brackish water due to the river meeting the ocean, fairly shallow, about 5 feet deep in
Oh,
most
right, you
spots,
said you saw an alligator
but
creature.
so full of silt and natural particles that it's nearly
Hard to
impossible
see.
to see through.
Yeah.
It's so dark that some people call it the Black Tea River.
Black
Unless an
tea.
object
That's
is
cute.
less than 3 inches from the surface, it's impossible to see. And if it's more than a foot underwater, you can't even see the outline of it. I was out on my dock rinsing off my family's small sailboat. It was a fairly good day, only a few thick clouds and a lot of sunshine. I had just finished when I saw a manatee drift over, attracted to the sound
Oh,
of the
the
water.
humanity.
They like to drink the hose water, so I turned the setting down, slung the hose over the side of the dock to let it drink. It was moving a bit oddly, but as soon as it rolled over onto its back
It's
to drink,
dead.
I noticed its front flipper had several very deep bite marks
Oh,
on
are
it
you
in
okay?
a U-shaped pattern. Now, manatees have no natural predators due to their bulk
Oh,
and
right.
very tough hide.
So got bit
So
by
I'd
something
never
that
seen
it got
one with
scared
bite
for?
marks like that before.
Man,
Usually all scars or injuries are from boat propellers, and the way this mark was set, I know that wasn't
claw
possible.
marks, yeah.
This was definitely a bite mark. The tooth marks were conical shaped, in a narrow row. I know it couldn't have been a shark because when they bite, they leave thin lines with dashes for each tooth. Alligators have peg-like teeth that are cone-shaped, but save for incredibly large bull gators, 12 to 15 feet long, they aren't bold enough or even big enough to attack a manatee.